To go in the opening quarter. Sanders pressure off for the fake and throws another interception. Mac Jones picked it off.
Welcome to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Here's Corum. And Corum, what a move. Corum, he needs a block. Corum down the sideline. Blake Corum, touchdown, Wolverines. 67 yards.
Sikkim 365 Radio is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Inside the 15. With Bryce Young. Young is going to take off running. Bryce Young, touchdown, Alabama. Does it with his arms, and now he does it with his legs.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Trying to catch the Sooner defense flat-footed. And pushing the pile in for a touchdown. Warren gives Oklahoma State the lead back.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Well. How you been? It's great to have you. Great to be here today. Craig Smoak to my right, Paul Catalina to my left, and behind the scenes as always, but always very much a major part of what we do, Jack McKenzie, also Levi Caraway, and Garrett Ross as well today. There are so many things to get to. And one of the things you have to try to weed through, and I got caught up today in a parody account because I'm an idiot. Okay, you knew that before that. But there are so many different stories and ideas and speculation, and it's great. But how many of them are legitimate? How many of them are real? We don't know that. But I do know this. Today at 3:30, Jason Shear, Wildcat Authority, 247 in Arizona. He'll join us today. We'll also check in with a writer who covers all of Utah and also a talk show host out of Seattle in Dick Fain. We're here today to try to get involved in what the heck is going on with college football. Paul, Craig, thank you. Great to hope you had a great weekend.
It was great. Enjoyed the fourth weekend. I spent a lot of time at the pool. Went to the Baylor Club yesterday and saw fireworks, which you know that I'm super enthusiastic about.
Boy, that says it all right there.
Yeah.
Says it all right there. Craig, chilling?
No, I'm like, let's go. Let's get into this. Like, yeah, 4th of July was fun. It was all great. Fireworks. I don't think those were actually legal in Waco. So for those who saw them, good job getting around the law.
The city.
Oh, okay, good. So they got around that. Yeah, hopefully everybody enjoyed 4th of July, and let's talk about what's going on because we've been off the air for 4 days, and there's quite a bit that's happened here.
Well, we were here on Thursday when all hell broke loose for the second time in 11 months. Texas OU last summer, and of course USC UCLA. We know that. Now what happens? Who is going to gain? Who will merge? Will any of that happen? How many major conferences will there be? When will that happen? What's the timeline? I do know this. A couple of people, for example, some of the ADs and commissioners of conferences were on vacation last week when everything happened. I also know this. John Wilner, who had the story from the San Jose Mercury News, I texted him earlier today. He's on vacation, but he did put up a couple of different things about what the Pac-12 might be doing, including saying, okay, we're going to get straight into our television rights with Fox and ESPN over the next 30 days or so to give their members a chance to feel like they can get some sort of information. No one has changed conferences since USC and UCLA. Nothing that appears to be imminent, but in college football today, you can throw that out the window. The Big 12, where do they stand in your opinion? What would be best for them? There are schools I know that you would like to add, if in fact they can. What do you think is going to happen in the end? If you could give me a crystal ball, Paul, what do you think is going to happen?
I think we're gonna lose a Power 5 conference. I think that's what's going to happen, and I think right now that the bullseye is right on the Pac-12 because it was built and centered around Los Angeles, which they've completely lost and aren't getting back. There's no way to get Los Angeles back. So because of that, I don't see a way that the Pac-12 moves forward and that the TV partners are really enthusiastic, even though they still have some pretty big TV markets in that deal and some pretty big brand names. The biggest one left. And it took the other school in that city with it, and USC and UCLA are gone. So I see some sort of merger. I mean, if we thought last year with 2 teams leaving the Big 12 and then 4 other teams coming in was chaotic, this is going to be truly chaotic because I think a lot of things are on the table, and if I'm the Pac-12, I'm really nervous about the future. And if I'm the second most nervous, I'm the ACC because you're locked into a TV deal from now until the end of time. It probably feels like, comparatively to all these other conferences that have negotiating windows that are open soon, which means that they can make moves easier than you can. Doesn't mean that they can't, but it's going to be hard for them to do it, or harder.
Yeah, I've got like a million things on my mind. I mean, for one, when it comes to the ACC, what is what really with that grant of rights? Because I'm seeing people act today like that. Oh, it's a cool $100 million. They just do that, no problem. Make that money back in the new SEC in like 2 years. It's like, I think you realize how much money that really is. And I don't think you realize you just cut that $100 million check and wait a little while for it to come back to you. It's not really that simple. Now, the contract itself might be. So for the legalese, for the lawyers out there, please tell me how the ACC can get around this contract outside of just the obvious, which is, some sort of mass exodus that would null and void it, or, somehow or another the money is there to be had. Although, again, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars for multiple schools is what we're looking at with the ACC scenario. Because I know the prevailing thought is that Clemson and Florida State and Miami and any combination of Georgia Tech and like a couple of others, that's what everybody's got in mind, right? That they're going to now be the next wave and they're going to splinter off into the ACC or into the SEC and the Big Ten. I mean, that's entirely possible, and I would expect that, yeah, that's absolutely what's going to happen. But a lot of people just seem to act like that's going to happen soon, and I would just love to know whether that is something to be expecting, whether that contract, that grant of rights is something that they can get out of that easily, or is this a scenario where legitimately that thing is ironclad for another 10-plus years?
If you're Wake Forest or a school like that could, and NC State, Georgia Tech could very well get left behind, even though it's in Atlanta, because it's not a big school in Atlanta. It's a school in Atlanta, you know.
But there's a lot of thought about them.
Yeah, I mean, but it also, like, you're going to hold out just like the Big 12 would have with Texas and Oklahoma until the bitter end, until you know how much money you're going to get because you're screwed. And you were. So the other thing that people may not realize is, a bunch of these schools have money, but Florida State and Miami, they're not just throwing money around. I mean, like, facility upgrades at those places have taken forever. They probably would need this deal to go through to really get what they wanted done. UNC's got a bunch of money and a bunch of academic prestige, but not everybody's the same way. Notre Dame's a wild card out there. There's so many things that have to happen with the ACC. It's not, like you said, Craig, it's not simple of just like, it's $100 million. It's not. I mean, it's not that simple.
Yeah, it's not impossible. I think it was Louisville's AD that said that. And if you're every school in the ACC right now, I do think you're looking for your life raft and your preserver, just like the Big 12 was whenever Oklahoma and Texas made their announcement. I think it's the same thing. It's just, a year later and a little bit more of an uncertain sort of future where now any rumors and talk that's been going around for years at this point about a Power 2 is actually coming to fruition. It's actually legitimately happening and will begin for all intents and purposes in a couple of years, if not sooner. I mean, all I know, and I've got a million questions because we could go just simply with the Big 12 storylines. We could go simply with the Pac-12 storylines. We could go simply with the ACC, I mean, each conference has like a dozen storylines going on right now, much less the bigger picture. But, it does seem that they are, trimming the fat, and we are going into this two super conference system. And what that means for the rest of, the folks out there is, some getting left behind, some getting left out. And what that ultimately means, in the not so much near future, but in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, I mean, who the heck really knows? I mean, I think we're all sort of searching for answers at this point, and none of us kind of really know any sort of a timeline. We're all just sort of waiting on Notre Dame right now, it feels like, to make some grand decision on what their future is going to hold. And beyond that, it's just what domino falling leads to another domino falling, and what do all those dominoes ultimately lead us to? And it does appear that one answer is yes, 2 power conferences. And beyond that, who the heck really knows right now?
Well, what we do know is that nothing now is sacred in college football, and that's, again, part of change as well. And so who knows what will happen? I have no idea. I had a really good feel throughout the Texas-Oklahoma SEC and eventual expansion, but I don't at this particular time, and I've reached out to a few people who I thought would, and they are saying nothing is imminent. And yet again, it could be changing in a little bit. Jason Shear, who we have at 3:30, put this is, again, up earlier. This was over the weekend. Sources indicate, this is from Jason Shear, who will join us at 3:30, Wildcat Authority, that there will be significant discussions between Big 12 and Pac-12 this week. It would include 4 Pac-12 members joining the Big 12. Now, okay, Gary, you could take that down. I don't know if that has changed, and we'll have Jason at 3:30 today. Whenever I see something that is interesting, and of course there's a ton of speculation, like there are going to be 6 teams and 4 teams. Hell, we don't know what the Big 12 is going to do. We don't know what the Pac-12 is going to do. I do know this. Dennis Dodd did today, earlier this afternoon, say the Pac-12 board authorized the conference to immediately begin negotiations for its next media rights agreement, already ahead of the Big 12 because their timetable's different. Indications of the Pac-12 will begin an exclusive 30-day negotiation window with ESPN and Fox. Other bidders then can weigh in after the deal if it's not done. Put into English, bottom line is that means without USC and UCLA, the Pac-12 is trying to respond and find out whether or not the numbers that they get are good enough for Washington and Oregon and Utah and Arizona schools and others to maybe say, hey, no, we've got to go take care of our own business. Can they wait 30 days for that?
I don't think that they can. And I posted this tweet over the weekend over like college football fans said, we want an expanded playoff, and college football respondents were like, how about 2 super conferences? And you're like, well, no, I don't think that's what they asked for. So I'm not sure. I mean, and I think we know that the fans across college football, the majority, don't kind of grasp or understand why this is happening outside of money or who asked for it. But on the other side of that, like even though that most of us college football fans didn't ask for the whole thing to be upended, I think right now you better stop hoping for the old way to stick around and hope that your favorite team doesn't get left out in the cold.
I want to see a dinosaur walk by the building. Guess what? That's not going to happen. Those days are over with, and they're not coming back. So, yeah, I mean, you can want all you want for the old days and all that jazz, but that is so far out the barn door that you are just delusional if you think there's any chance of that. The best bet of that would be going and following a program like McNeese State or something. I mean, that's as close as you're going to get, is going down to the lower levels of what those are even going to be called now at this point, but that's your best bet, because big-time college football, as far as the big brand names, they've made it very clear what their future looks like, and it's raking in hundreds of millions of dollars joined at the hip together, and we're not done with the end of expansion or realignment. USC and UCLA weren't even the first, big shot. Technically, Oklahoma and Texas really weren't. When you look at some of the strategic planning that was going on, the Big Ten years and years ago with the additions of Rutgers and Maryland, even if you want to go all the way back to that. I mean, we've seen constant change, and one thing's for sure, we're in for more change. And I think everybody's just trying to wrap their head around what extent of change are we talking about? Are we talking about a couple more teams finding their way into the Big Ten or the SEC? Are we talking about full-on conferences dying? And you asked about the Pac-12, so let's just kind of start there, because, again, you can go in a million different directions with just this realignment topic, but I think the Pac-12 is dead. I just don't understand why the Big 12 would even really give into a merger at this point in time. I feel like they've got the upper hand. I understand that right now, technically, the Pac-12 probably has the two best brands with Oregon and Washington, but they're not Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, to that level, in my opinion, they're good enough that, yeah, it gives you a little bit of sway. But in terms of the Big 12, I like their total package better than everything outside of Oregon and Washington, quite frankly. So I would think that the Big 12 has the upper hand right now. I understand the Pac trying to do whatever it can to save face and save what it can save. I understand that, yes, San Diego State appears like it would be a really excellent option, but beyond that, Boise State or whoever you want to throw into that mix, I don't know really what that does for you. And it would be great television to get a little microphone somehow into those Pac-12 television talks, because I can't imagine those are going to go really well on the heels of last week's news. I just don't see a scenario where some network's like, yeah, no USC, no UCLA, sign us up. We want every part of that. I don't see that. So I would think the Big 12's got the upper hand, but how much they want to, bite off and chew. 6 teams. I'm curious to hear from the people out there. Do you like the 6 that have been mentioned? Do you like the new wave plus these 6? Do you think that's sustainable? Is that a good third conference that could be out there? I certainly think it's much better than the alternatives I was thinking of a couple days ago. Certainly better than what I thought the Big 12 could look like late on Friday night, when you started to think not so much about who are they going to pick off, but who could somebody potentially come pick off from the Big 12, I mean, you see Kansas fans scrambling to try to join the Big 10. If it was up to Kansas fan, they would have done that 17 years ago. But the problem is I don't think the Big 10's ever going to answer that door. See West Virginia fans scrambling, let's get into the ACC. See Tech fan wants to join, hey, let's go to the Big – I mean, everybody's looking out for themselves, but I think the Big 12, together the way they are right now, are in a stronger position than a lot of the options that are out there, outside of, obviously, the Super 2.
I have no idea. If I tried to act like I knew, I don't. I know that if you're a Pac-12 fan and you hear us or Craig mentioning or anyone mentioning that the Pac-12 is dead, hey, the Big 12 heard throughout the several weeks that same thing. They survived, but it was a little bit of a different animal because it was only phase 1 of crazy with Texas and Oklahoma. Now you have the second phase, and it does appear as we're going closer and getting closer and closer to whatever a super mega conference might be, whatever numbers there might be. There are 65 Power 5 schools. 60, is that right? Power 5, counting Notre Dame. There are other schools right outside of that, like Brigham Young, who's now a part of the about to be a part of the Big 12. I can't imagine it would stop at 28 or 30, any kind of super mega conferences overall. I honestly can't believe that. That might be me being kind of like hanging on to a thread of the history of college football. I just can't imagine that, but I don't know. I do know this. No one knows. Even those who are in meetings right now or not, they don't know, because no one knew about USC and UCLA, and like 6 people, remember, knew about Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think the USC-UCLA thing, the UCLA part, that was completely out of nowhere to me. The USC thing, though, that was kind of a thought of a few people that they could be one of those schools that was looking out for their best interest, and especially on the shaky ground the Pac-12 was built on. And yeah, for the Pac-12 fans out there, not gonna poke at you the way Pac-12 folks did the Big 12 when they were going through their OU Texas thing. A little classier than that, but yeah, I do think the Pac-12 is dead. That's nothing against the fans of this conference. It's just, you ask me my opinion, yeah, I think that conference is dead.
Who do you think has the best chance to survive? Now, the Pac-12 has just had a shot across the bow. They got a big hole in their up front in their ship. Who has the best chance to survive?
I mean, I think of the 3 that aren't super.
Pac-12 and Big 10. Pac-12 and Big 12.
The Big 12 does. The Big 12 buoyed their league last year. And here's the biggest difference look, Los Angeles, depending on population fluctuation, is a top 3 TV market, media market, and all that. It's a hub for a lot of different things. And it's also a market that probably in the Pac-12 cares the middle most about college sports, if not lower to the bottom when they talk about fan interest, because all this happened last Thursday and none of the sports talk stations in LA really talked about it at all, as if it was just like, oh, hey, this is happening. By the way, Freddie Freeman went 1 for 4 last night, and let's talk about that for 45 minutes, because that's what they do there. So you've got a big hole to fill that, yes, Texas and Oklahoma are huge brands that left, but it didn't put a gap in the media markets necessarily, because the Big 12 was already kind of set up as the conference of Middle America. So
I think I've made it very clear the Big 12 is in a better spot in my eyes, and that's not being a homer. That's just looking at the Pac-12 minus USC and UCLA suddenly, and the fact that they were, even with those teams, on a little bit shaky ground, and their television future was going to be a little bit uncertain, not in terms of having a television future, but what those figures were going to look like. And if those figures were going to be really great, do you think that those 2 LA schools would be leaving right now? No. But now, if they had given a little more of a heads up, is there a way they could have negotiated? I know a lot of people talking about, let's get Notre Dame to this conference by giving them a larger share than everybody else. Maybe they could have negotiated that in the Pac-12 where, hey, LA schools, you get another percentage because, let's face it, you kind of carry the deal. They could have made some concessions possibly, but I don't know. I mean, the USC and UCLA bolting the way that they did, even though with USC there was some scuttlebutt about that. Ever since OU and Texas in particular, there's been scuttlebutt about schools like that, about the ACC programs and what their future holds. Clemson going to the SEC one day, for example. All that expansion kind of rumor mill stuff has been around for a while, but I mean, to actually see it happen was pretty crazy. And yes, to see the Pac-12 with Oregon and Washington now as their top brands, and those two certainly have to be looking around, and they're looking around, looking for a life raft from the Big Ten or from the SEC for that matter. I mean, yeah, clearly the Big 12 is on better ground. But having said that, if they get some combination that's not Oregon and Washington included, and it's the 4 of Utah and the Arizona schools and Colorado, okay, like that. I mean, I'll be honest, that does not really excite me all that much. Utah, I know BYU fans don't want to hear this, but that's the strongest of those 4. Arizona, basketball-wise, cool. Outside of that, Arizona State as a whole, I mean, I'm just being honest with you.
But here's the thing. One of the things the Big 12 has done is with some schools that may not carry the markets they're close to, like UCF is Orlando, right? Houston is Houston. And then you have Arizona and Arizona State. Basically, that's Tempe, Scottsdale, Phoenix, and then also Tucson. What I'm saying is that's been kind of how they've added, but that's not going to move the needle too much. But you'd rather add them than not.
Right, but I'm not done with my point yet.
But I wanted to bring up the larger markets that some of them are attached to.
Yeah, but it's also like saying, like, you get Fort Worth if you get TCU, and it's
no, that's not what I'm saying.
Sort of, kind of.
What I'm comparing it to, and I get it, is I'm comparing it to UCF does not carry Tampa.
Right.
But that's
but it's
kind
not
of
about
what they've done.
The market just solely necessarily. I mean, it's also about how much value are you bringing? Like, what are you bringing to the table? You can't just say, well, we're in Phoenix. Okay, and you bring with you what? What share of the market? How many fans? Like, there's more questions than just, hey, they're in a city that's big in the top 50. I just think it's more complicated than that. But what I was getting at was, if you get those 4, cool. Like, I have nothing against those teams, but it's not something that, like, I mean, it's not OU and Texas joining the conference. It's not USC and UCLA joining the conference. It's cool, and it makes the Big 12 somewhat stronger. You add Oregon and Washington to that mix. It still doesn't put you on par with the other 2, but it puts you a little closer, and it does, I think, up your value a little bit. So I would be, I think, excited sort of to see the 6 come over from the Pac-12, but beyond that, I mean, it's kind of wait and see as far as I'm concerned.
From Daryl Zimmer, UCF does carry Tampa, and a couple others said there's a lot more than you realize out of the Phoenix market. You're thinking. Yeah, we're not saying they don't have a chunk of it.
The Big 12's goal is not necessarily media markets like that. That's kind of not a happy accident, but that's an overlapping thing. If you look at the schools they added, Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU, you're looking at big and potentially bigger alumni bases as the years go on. So UCF has a huge alumni base. BYU has a huge not only alumni base but a fan base because it is the school for a certain religion. You know, that it's the Mormon school. So everybody that is, you know, it's kind of like Notre Dame fans that are Catholics, you know, That's their school, so they have a huge national fan base. So that's what they've tried to add. So the media market size is good. Cincinnati isn't a very growing media market, but it's a bigger school. So they're adding schools with with large alumni bases that can get larger as the years go on, because that's the best way to counter losing a huge alumni base school like Texas, and then one that has a big alumni base, not quite as big, but like Oklahoma is just people.
Craig, you go after this, but I love all of what you're doing on the chat room. A lot of you are trying to give us some information on the markets, the teams, the ones you follow. We appreciate that. And, again, all those who are part of today's show already.
Yeah, I mean, the market's come into play a little bit. I'm not going to act like some major TV executive, but I think what's a bit more important than getting, the market per se is, like, how much are we really talking about TV ratings-wise? Like, again, like, what do you bring to the table? If it's only we're in this market – that's top 50. Like, I'm going to need a little bit more than that. And I'm not singling out the Arizona schools. It's like, yes, I understand, hey, they're in the Tempe, Tucson, Scottsdale, like that whole Glendale, all that area, and there's millions of people there, and it's a great location. Hey, that'd be a fun travel deal. And I'm not against anybody getting into the Big 12, like from those 4 to 6 Pac-12 schools that we're talking about. I'm just saying, I don't think it's as simple as like, oh, we got the Phoenix market. That's what I'm saying.
All right, from Lance Aldridge. By the way, Lance, great to have you on the chat. Of course, he's also with digital media. He is an advertising executive who handles the business that handles Richard Carr Motors, who Craig does endorsements for them. Digital media, the internet, now makes markets a lot less relevant. Passion and broad appeal matter more than maybe ever before. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Do the fans have any say in this other than their eyeballs? If you're a fan right now of Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio State, whatever, you don't care. No matter what, you're fine. You are set up for life, and that's great, but you always really were. Do the fans of college football have any say at all in what happens next?
No, not really. I mean, what can they possibly do?
Have the fans of college football had a say in what happens in anything?
No, because we would have had an expanded playoff a long time ago. We would have had any number of things a long time ago if it was up to the fans of college football. But, I mean, outside of boycotting, but what does that do? That only hurts the school that's trying to, like, if you're one of these smaller schools that doesn't have 400,000 living alumni, like I was talking about Baylor earlier today, on paper, if you just take like accomplishments and momentum and things that like aren't really calculable necessarily, and really don't matter in the grand scheme of things as far as why these teams are moving around, like Baylor, like if you put them in a league and you gave them $100 million share, they're going to go toe-to-toe with the best in that league. I don't care how many national titles they have.
They're doing that now.
They're doing it now.
Million,
They're doing it now with less money than Texas and Oklahoma and going and punching them in the mouth on a regular basis and hanging and handling themselves very, very well. I have no doubt with their current leadership in place, give them an equal share or close to it, and they're going to go compete in any conference against any team. I really fully believe that. But are they going to bring any eyeballs? Very little. So are they going to be attractive outside of like the success they've had and what they've got going on? But when it comes to shaking up like the TV market and things like that, no, they're going to be way down the line in terms of fan base size.
You know what? Miami didn't shake any eyeballs, and then all of a sudden they became as elite as anybody in college football, and they were a go-to watch, must-watch type of team. I'm not saying Baylor will get to what Miami was. I know in the 80s or 90s. So many of you, man, the chat room, we appreciate it. Over 2,000 of you right now viewing us on Sikkim 365's YouTube channel, 365 Sports. Thank you very much. Cannot thank you enough. We come back with Jason Shear. He covers the Arizona teams with the Wildcat Authority for University of Arizona. His thoughts. We check in at 4 with Brigham Young in Utah. What's going on with the passion there? What's being said? And then also we hit Seattle, Washington about how this and what's the reaction in the state of Washington on Washington, Oregon. I know Oregon's a different state, but them all of a sudden looking up and they're not a part of that move with UCLA and USC. We love you. We appreciate you. This is what we're here for. Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. I've been discussing the taste of Southern Roots craft beer tasted in concert now for a couple of 3 or 4 weeks. In fact, Paul might be going to it, possibly, and maybe you are as well. Craft beer tasting coming up July 7th. That's just in a couple of days from 6 until 9 And this is, of course, a live concert with Brett Welch and David Ramirez. That's coming up in 2 days. That's Thursday, 6 to 9, Taste of Southern Roots craft beer tasting and concert. Go to discoverwoodway.com if you're interested. In fact, if you do this right now on the text line, 254-339-1122, I don't know for sure, but the first two that you can text me and say you want to go to this event in 2 nights at the Taste of Southern Roots craft beer and tasting in Woodway, around the pavilion and all the things they do, I will see if I can get you a couple of tickets for that event. 254-339-1122. We'll do it in time order. That's this Thursday night. Again, discoverwoodway.com.
The 4th of July sales event is going on now at Allen Samuels in Waco. The new 2022 impressive Wagoneer Series 2 and 3 have 2.9% for 72 months, plus $4,000 competitive bonus cash. That's right, and $4,000 bonus cash. This incentive on the new 2022 Wagoneers for a limited time only at Allen Samuels in Waco. First responders get $500 extra cash. Come shop the huge new car and truck inventory today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott, covering Conroe and Houston, 936-756-7717 or cam.heathcott@edwardjones.com. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
You know what would make this moment better? Pizza. Dough made from scratch and an Italian family sauce recipe pizza. 3 fresh signature cheeses making a melty blanket of perfection pizza. Like loads of premium toppings like crispy Old World pepperoni, savory Italian sausage, and fresh sliced veggies pizza. That's Marco's Pizza. Visit marcos.com and make any moment better. And with 4 locations in Waco, Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and soon to open in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental. Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Text us at 254-339-1122. The Sikkim 365 Radio text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
All right, Derek, put up that tweet again, if you don't mind, from over the weekend from Jason Shear, Wildcat Authority. This is from Jason. Sources indicate Wildcat Authority that there will be significant discussions, Big 12 and Pac-12 this week. It would include 4 Pac-12 members joining the Big 12. This, of course, can be fluid. It can change at any time. And we're now joined by Jason Shear, Wildcat Authority in the state of Arizona. Jason, thanks for your time. Do you still feel like that's where we are right now?
Yeah, definitely. I believe that there were some sort of discussions today, or I'm confident there were some sort of discussions today. What they involve, it's been hard to pin down. It could be a framework. It could be very preliminary. But I do know that there has been very legitimate discussions with Arizona and the other 3 schools and the Big 12.
Would you say that the most likely scenario is the Pac-12 dissolving and the other conferences raiding it, or some sort of merger?
It feels like, I think there's 2 things at play, but right now it feels like the Big 12 kind of raiding it. A lot of it depends on Oregon and Washington. Are they going to go to the Big 10? How long do the schools want to wait for them? I don't think the Big 12 right now is open to a complete merger with the Pac-12. I don't think that's on the table unless the media rights prove that it's more valuable to everyone. But right now, if I had to guess, again, it's fluid. I would say the Big 12 kind of taking those 4 schools and the Pac-12 pretty much dissolving would seem to be the most likely situation that we're looking at.
Jason, people who paid close attention knew, like, obviously that these TV deals were coming up, and obviously there was the OU Texas move last year, and the Pac-12 has had some issues. But what level of gobsmacked were you last week when this news first dropped about USC and UCLA to the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I shouldn't be all that surprised, but I was pretty surprised. I think everyone was kind of blindsided by it. The thought process would be, maybe that the Pac-12 would have to change their revenue scheme, with get rid of the revenue sharing and give UCLA and USC a little bit more money and the money that they probably deserve. But I don't think anyone knew this was coming, and then it moved so quickly. I mean, the USC and UCLA didn't really give the Pac-12 an opportunity to come to the table with some sort of answer to keep the schools, and so it was pretty surprising for all those involved about what happened and kind of how it played out.
Jason, back 11 months ago, Texas OU and the SEC, of course, even a week after Big 12 Media Days, and we were in Arlington and everything seemed to be happy, joy. What has been the fan reaction, in your opinion, or what you have seen or learned or heard along the way the last 3 or 4 days?
Yeah, it's kind of mixed. The initial reaction was one of sadness because out here in the West, I mean, the Pac-12 is the conference. Like, that's people grow up watching it. Your team's in the Pac-12, all that, and so the reality setting in that the Pac-12, I mean, at the very least, it's not going to exist like we all knew it, and it may not exist at all. And so I think people were kind of sad and taken aback by that, belief that the Pac-12 may not exist, and then that's kind of shifted to, okay, what's next for my school? Like, how do I make sure that my school is in the best position? What is my school doing to make sure that their future is secure? Because right now in the Pac-12, it's kind of every man for himself. And each school now, you can go to message boards, communities, and all that. They're saying, okay, is my school going to go to the Big 10? Are we going to go to the Big 12, ACC, et cetera? It's moved on to the how do we secure our future viewpoint as opposed to, okay, this was sad. I think everyone's kind of moved past the sadness phase, at least for now.
So, Jason, how do you think Arizona State fans will feel about playing those teams in the Big 12?
I think there's kind of a feeling of excitement, and the main reason why is the access. I mean, if you were watching Pac-12 rooting for Pac-12 teams, as an Arizona fan, for instance, you were watching your team play at 8:30 at night on the Pac-12 network, and there's very little access there and very little excitement. And like Arizona now, like the idea that they could be playing a game at 11 a.m. on Saturday on a major network, a football game, is awesome. And Arizona or Tucson, even though football brings in the money, it's a basketball town. And all of a sudden, if they join the Big 12, you have Baylor, Kansas, and so you all of a sudden you're in the best basketball conference in the nation, which is awesome for Arizona fans. So I think that Arizona fans, there's a little trepidation, but I think it's kind of getting there. Like, you know what, the Big 12 is kind of exciting for both sports.
Jason, I've seen you explain this already on Twitter, but for those who stay off of that app, and rightfully so a lot of the time, but you've seen the reports about certain schools coming out and pledging, we're with the Pac-12. We're going to be here through these negotiations and whatnot. I know they kind of have to say that, but can you explain for the folks out there why some might be doing that and why it might not be that big of a deal?
Well, because you're a member of your conference until you're not. And so if you can't admit that you're looking elsewhere, and the Pac-12 this morning says that they're opening up media rights, well, the only way they're going to get anything close to the deal they want is if they're basically pretending or displaying that the schools are all staying. And you need, kind of a statement of unity. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Arizona and Utah come out with a similar statement soon, because there's no way you're getting any kind of TV deal if there's rumors that 6 of your teams are going to leave the conference. So you have to be able to strengthen and present the strongest media rights deal. And then again, like, you can't admit to it, and you're a member of the conference until you're not. Arizona, in an hour could release a statement, and then tomorrow say, you know what, the Big 12 came with an offer that was too good to pass up, and we're a member of the Big 12. It's all just so fluid. But if you admit that you're looking around, you've lost all leverage whatsoever as a conference. And really, even if you're looking at the Big 12, if you come out with a statement that says you're looking around, you still lost leverage with the Big 12. You need to kind of hold pat and play it out, and that's why these schools are releasing these statements.
Well, yeah, they have this whatever negotiating window that's been reported, Jason, as well. And how much longer can anybody wait? You have to wait for what you think is the right decision. How much longer can the Pac-12 really wait? How much longer can the Big 12 wait, if at all, because of what might be available? And even the ACC, of course, sits there with another 10, 15 years on their grant of rights.
Yeah, I mean, I think this thing's going to move really fast. I do. Like, I don't think that they vote on the media rights thing opening up unless the Pac-12 or George, the commissioner, has an idea of where this is headed. I think he has an idea in mind that he believes can save the conference, whether that's a merger or adding teams, whatever it may be, because you have to be able to present something to the network. Fox probably isn't going to go to the table because of the Big Ten, and then ESPN is kind of bidding against itself. So you're really presenting this to ESPN and Fox, it's an exclusive 30-day window, but you better have something to present. And there's no way he's presenting a 10-team conference without the LA schools. So he's got to have an idea of where he's headed. And if you're the Big 12, you probably have a feeling for that. Maybe you're a little worried that he tries to raid, some Pac-12 tries to raid the Big 12 a little bit and go that route. And so you have to be aggressive if you're the Big 12. You can't just sit around and wait. And I think you need to be aggressive if you're all these conferences, ACC included. There's rumors that are kind of hanging around. They're not as strong as some sort of Pac-12 ACC merger. And if you're the ACC and that's something that appeals to you, you need to get that done as quickly as possible, because the time of waiting is over. You just can't do it anymore with the way that these college football teams are now looking out for themselves, and rightfully so. But you can't wait around and kind of see what happens. You need to go out and figure out your conference.
Jason, what are, just not so much specific numbers, but Arizona State's a large school. They're attached to, obviously it's Tempe, but attached to Phoenix, and Tucson, of course, a little bit away, but near Phoenix. How much draw do either one of them have when it comes to media coverage? I know it's big with Arizona State and Arizona basketball, Arizona football or whatever. How much draw do they have in that market, that TV market?
It's the Phoenix market itself is obviously big. ASU doesn't dominate the Phoenix market. There's professional teams there, obviously, with the Suns and the Diamondbacks. But it's a pretty decent market. I mean, it's not going to be, like, let's say the Big 12 asset. It's not going to be a ton of revenue at all, but it'll be the idea that you can maybe get into new markets. And I think that's the most appealing thing. It's not necessarily, ASU and Arizona are going to bring us a ton of money as schools and brands. It's more of, okay, maybe we could get the Big 12 into the Phoenix market. And that's something that can maybe expand the conference. But the two schools itself, I hate to say it, but there's probably not a lot of individual value with their sports there.
Would there be a bump? They're already in the Pac-12. How do you think recruiting would be affected by a conference move?
I think it may be a little more difficult for football to recruit in California. I know that their pitch is already going to be, look, you're playing half your games in California if you go to the LA schools, which is great, but your away games, you're going all the way across the country, whereas in Arizona, you're much closer and you'd be able to travel to more games. I think Arizona, they're starting to dip into Texas a little bit with recruiting. I would assume if they go to the Big 12, it becomes a lot more than that, and it becomes a legitimate focus of their recruiting. So I think it could hurt a little bit with California, but it should help with Texas. It probably has a little bit of an impact, but in my discussions with both basketball staff and football staff, they honestly don't seem overly concerned about it.
Jason, thank you, man. Appreciate your time. Jason Shearer for the Wildcat Authority, who had that tweet that we put up at the start of the show and also before his segment as well. And I had somebody yesterday send me a direct message that kind of surprised me. In fact, I was trying to figure out what was going on. And they said, this is happening. And again, there's a lot of that. In fact, the 240, we just got this in the text line. I don't mind reading all this because sometimes you are connected to who you are. Colorado Board of Regents scheduled an executive session for 5:30 today. Now, if that's the case, it might just be to what the hell we're going to do, or it could be something with more to that as well.
There have to be a lot of those meetings going on right now. They have to have a lot of those what are we going to do meetings going on at the moment, I would think. But, yeah, I mean, if you've got something, we try to be on the up and up and a bit respectful here, so don't just go throwing crap at the wall. But, yeah, if you feel like you got a little, something brewing and you know a guy who knows a guy or knows a gal or whatever, then by all means pass it along. But certainly I would think that there's a lot of meetings going on in Pac-12 country and Big 12 country, heck, even still in Big 10 SEC country right now, even though they're playing with all the gold in the world at the moment. But I like you said, he said they're not bringing a whole lot of value as far as the markets and all that. They are bringing the thing. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier. But I'd still, would love to see Arizona, especially in basketball. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And, if it were to come to fruition, it's just wild that, less than a year ago, I think I probably had 2 or 3 segments talking about the possibilities of this happening. Just, if stuff were to go haywire. And it never really seemed all that legitimate, but here we are. And the Pac-12 is falling apart. And maybe the Big 12 is too, or maybe they're going to join together. Maybe the ACC is involved. I mean, who the heck knows? But it is fascinating stuff, and he's right. Everybody's just looking out for their own backside. Like every Big 12 fan base I saw was making their pitch to no one in particular on Twitter, as though Twitter was going to say, you know what, Iowa State, you go to the Big 10.
Yeah.
That was convincing. You go to the Big 10. Everybody's got to look out for themselves, but hopefully the Big 12 schools can see the opportunity here and come together for once in their life and make something good happen.
From Paul Foster, and I wish I could read all the chat room, but it's on the screen when we go to a guest, and sometimes you can see the chat going on the left-hand side from Paul. The Pac-12 media negotiations are not about getting the schools to sign on. It's about showing the schools where they stand financially. Right. They know what's coming, and will look to package the leftovers. And, yeah, they may not get what they want, but how do you find out? How do you find out if you don't ask? And now we'll see what they can do. It's kind of like, let's move this up instead of let's delay this, like the Big Ten on purpose, because they knew what they were about to do with USC and UCLA.
That's what I wonder. The Big 12 feels like, and it wouldn't be a bad conference as this is it, but this is the medium school conference. This is where people wind up, and it's
the best of the rest.
And the best of the rest, where everybody's going to have whatever the conferences wind up being. There's probably not a Power 5 anymore. There's probably a Power 3.5 or 4, but there's that whatever it winds up being, and the Big 12 is the best of the rest, and everybody goes coast to coast. But the Big 12 doesn't get Florida State or Oregon or Washington, but they get Wake Forest and NC State and Syracuse, and then that's kind of how it all, whatever it is. So
that's where I think the ACC plays such a pivotal role, and that's why at the start of the show I was talking about I would really love to know what's actually what when it comes to that 2036 out in their grant of rights, because if that thing is a bit more ironclad, and again, I have no idea. I don't know anything from Adam as far as that contract goes. I'm seeing people who say, well, we get enough schools, together and break away and disintegrate that agreement and like all this stuff, all these exit strategies. And it does appear as though there is momentum, at least in the eyes of social media, that, that could end far sooner than 2036 just because of the environment that we're in. And it's just you can't contain it for that long. But they are the wild card, because if they do adhere to that, even if it's only for half as long as that contract's remaining, we're still looking at 2030. Okay, well, that's 8 years from now. A lot can, if we're still, as I said earlier to the guys, if we're actually complaining or worrying about something in 2 years as regards to college football, I'll feel great about that. That still matters here in a couple of years. You know what I'm saying? With just the world on fire the way that it is, if we still have these types of first world problems, I will be happy with that. But that ACC wild card, I mean, that really, to me, along with Notre Dame, obviously, is really going to be telling, I think. But Notre Dame first, because they're a bit more on the clock. And then the ACC, I mean, again, how ironclad is that contract? Because if they can bust loose and Clemson and let's say Florida State and Miami and North Carolina, and I know that this team would want that school or this conference and whatever combination. But if they can get out earlier, then that changes everything. That changes absolutely everything. And that changes everything for everybody, even if you're already sitting pretty right now, like the SEC. So I want to learn more about that side of things.
Yeah, and just to say that, and someone's going to say, yeah, well, North Carolina and Duke aren't leaving anywhere. That he was just using a combination. I'll try to be proactive as well. Hilda, Craig has brought in the elephant in the room. The ACC's contract is one caveat that brings about the greatest change, if in fact anything was to ever happen with there. And again, that might be nearly impossible. Who knows what ESPN can do to, if they see something, okay, well, this is going to add here. And I don't know.
Here's the thing. If you're the Big 12 right now and you're sitting here negotiating on your future and trying to figure things out, I mean, is it the most prudent to go grab 6 teams? I mean, yes, you want Oregon and Washington. And yes, I'm sure there's some other combination of those other 4 that you want, if not all 4. But, I mean, how much of these decisions, because, I mean, clearly the Big Ten leadership and SEC leadership, like, they've got the whole, like, the walls, like, charted and tracked, and they got all their stuff planned and ducks in a row and all of that jazz. But if you're these others, like the Big 12, who your best hope is to be the third wheel, basically, and be the best third wheel imaginable, I mean, how calculated can you be with the big wild card questions like Notre Dame and what they do? I mean, if they stay independent, doesn't that change quite a bit? Mm-hmm. If they go to the SEC or the Big Ten, doesn't that change quite a bit? Like, that alone is a huge domino, much less, again, this ACC piece, because if you're the Big 12, like, yeah, you can go scramble and grab all the teams you want to now and get all fat and happy, although your value per team lowers probably significantly, even with a new TV deal coming up. Or do you kind of have to be a little bit smarter, knowing that in a year from now, because we've had it happen the last 2 summers, all hell could break loose again, although there's only so many remaining options out there, and perhaps that's the ACC just crumbling, and how do you then plan on going and picking up those pieces of whatever's left over, you know?
You know, one of the potential things you could do is, instead of waiting for all hell to break loose, is you're the one who breaks it loose. Yeah. So, you know what, if the Pac-12 gives you a couple options you like, but there might be a couple others when you're trying to go, coast to coast that you maybe want to make an offer to. Look, you could go to Florida State and Clemson, and you can say, like, we can maybe get you close to $100 million. If we get you to 85, would you guys want to be the best teams in this conference? Like,
I also I'm gonna try to do this, and thanks to Rod Webb, by the way, for a lot of things he's been putting up in the text line, which is 254-339-1122. I think a lot of times people don't quite understand the Big 12 grant of rights. It's not just that it runs out in a couple of years; it's also much more than that. And when you talk about the Big 12 having a team rated by somebody else, unless one of them ends up in the Big 10 or the SEC, and also, by the way, they had the opportunities to come and pick somebody out of the conference and didn't, other than the 2 that they did, it's much more than sometimes we realize. And the only way you could afford to leave the conference, Texas and Oklahoma will make up whatever they end up paying pretty quickly because of how much they're going to get from the SEC's new TV deal. So it's the ACC's locked in. The Pac-12 right now, there's doors almost all but open. The Big 12 has a couple more years left. And what they're doing, we know the Big Ten's about to do $1 billion plus, and the SEC, of course, is about to do that as well.
The ACC's locked in, but again, to what extent? Can they get out of this deal in the next couple of years? Because that changes everything. Or are they, again, locked into 2036? Because that absolutely changes everything. That means you got everybody having to wait for a decade plus to go and get Florida State or to go and get Miami. And so, yeah, that changes things dramatically. And that's why, to me, along with Notre Dame, that's the big wild card question. When we're talking about the immediacy of realignment and what can happen the soonest and happen over the course of this summer or even into next season and all of that. Like, what is what with the ACC?
By the way, that's a great question. And that is something we'll work on, having somebody for you with that as well, so we can learn as well. Jake Hatch will join us at 4 o'clock. He covers the state of Utah, does a great job. And then also at 4:30 today, we'll check in with a broadcaster, talk show host out of Seattle on what's been the reaction on this from the University of Washington fan base.
And I'm not even sure what you were referring to as far as the Big 12 and the bye and all that, but Oklahoma and Texas are still sitting here in the Big 12 and are looking to for the next, year to 2 years, depending on kind of what happens. Now, if the Big 12 were to fall apart, hey, their buyout suddenly disintegrates. And that's what ESPN was trying to do, quite frankly, this time a year ago. They were hoping that was going to be the case. And I think it's evident when you see how much the networks are involved that ESPN saying, we didn't have anything to do with Oklahoma and Texas last year. We all know that is BS. Big caps BS from ESPN. We know that they were involved, just like Fox is involved in what's going on right now with the LA schools and the Big Ten. So, I mean, who really knows? But, yeah, that buyout, that's legitimate. I mean, if it was as simple as like, hey, just go pay that, then don't you think Oklahoma would have done that by now? But here they are, and they're probably going to be around for another year or two if things stay status quo. But as we're seeing, everything's not likely to stay status quo.
Go pay it. Look, there's 5 schools in the country. 5. I can think of off the top of my head, and if it was any more than that, I would make
5 what?
That could go pay it right now.
What would that check be?
The $100 million,
$80 to $100 million.
Yeah. Like Texas could go pay it. Ohio State could go pay it. Michigan could go pay it. I don't think Notre Dame could go pay it. Honestly,
Stanford and a few others could pay it. But
Stanford could, but like you're talking about schools with gigantic endowments that aren't used for athletics, by the way, that they would have to tap into a lot of times to do that, and just go pay it is not. Look, people think about Miami as this big brand because they won 5 national titles in the 80s and 90s and in 2001, but they're not like, that's a really small private school that until 3 months ago, well, it's July, until 7 months ago, decided to finally start spending money on athletics again. So it's not like they can just go pay it, and they're big schools that have lots of money, but not that kind of money.
Well, and that's why the ACC rumor that you see floating around in terms of, the traction of them getting out early is like them agreeing to some sort of, and again, it's just rumors and whatever, but them having some sort of a payment agreement. He paid $10 million, kind of like the AAC was doing with, potentially with Houston and them.
The AAC, yeah.
But we're talking about $80 to $100 million. Like that's, and I know you'd make it back quickly, but if you're all of a sudden you're talking about like 4 teams, that's hundreds of millions of dollars we're suddenly talking about. And yeah, maybe one of them could do it, maybe a couple, but it would again depend on what kind of agreement and all that's just a whole nother topic.
We got to go.
Yeah, there's one real quick point. If I'm going to pay $10 million a year for 10 years, that's a lot of coaches I can't fire anymore.
For some schools, yeah.
Yeah, for some of them are.
It's a little less NIL money.
But if you start making an extra $20 million a year immediately in a couple of years, well, then you're doubling whatever you owe. So isn't it amazing what college athletics is like? It is absolutely amazing, and we appreciate those of you who are watching and viewing us right now. And I wish we could get to all of your chats. So much information. Some of you trying to say, "Hey, wait a minute, this is who carries this city." We get it. We appreciate you because some of you are in those cities who we are, in fact, discussing as well. When we come back, Jake Hatch on Utah. And what are they thinking? He covers BYU as well. And, man, I'll tell you what, I asked this question about Brigham Young and what would their fan base think about Utah. And there's a little bit of that Utah looking down their nose at Brigham Young when it comes to the Pac-12 expansion. And do they want – and now all of a sudden they could be the ones saying, hey – that looks pretty good. By the way, you see hats on the front of our set. Paul brought a big box in. Colt Barber, Ashley Hodge, and Brian Etheridge are partners. These are all Sikkim 365 radio hats. Jack, can we give one of them away right now? This is what we'll do. And I'm going to stay tuned on how you can win a hat. We'll do that next after this. Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac. Got a lot of great deals going on right now over at Richard Carr. They are the people that you can count on, and I counted on them just about 2 or 3 weeks ago. My car was all dinged up, had to get it in there for some service, and the second time in 3 months I've had to do that. Both times not my fault, actually, but had to take it over to Richard Car like normal, and let me tell you, they are the people that you can count on. Donnie and company over there did a great job with my vehicle, and when I got it back, I recognized it, of course, because it was my vehicle, but it looked better than when I bought it brand new about 2 years ago. It was kind of amazing to see how nice and cleaned up and fixed up it looked, and the entire process was just, pretty much stress-free, and that's what you're looking for these days. They've got new cars and trucks, not only in addition to their great customer service, but they've got new cars and trucks arriving each week over at Richard Car. You can call the dealership or go online and check their current inventory. You can also buy or build your perfect vehicle. Just hop on over to the dealership or give them a phone call, chat online, and start to build that perfect ride, whether it's a truck, car, or SUV. Richard Car will hook you up and help build that dream car that you're looking for. But if you're looking to buy new, you want to build something, kind of customize it, what have you, you can do that. But if you are looking to get into a car right away, it's a little bit harder with new vehicles because of supply chain issues, computer chip shortages, all that jazz. It's been a little bit more difficult. Well, they've got plenty of pre-owned cars and trucks that are available right now. You can drive them off the lot today, get into a ride, get a great deal, and be on your way. If you need a car today, consider one of their dozens of quality pre-owned cars and trucks. All of them have undergone a 172-point inspection, so you can drive them with peace of mind. And as somebody who had a car where I could not drive with peace of mind, to finally be in a vehicle where I could, it just makes a world of difference. It makes life so much better every morning when you get up to go to work and you get into a car and you don't have to worry about the oil being messed up or the locks being messed up or whatever issues you're facing. That carefree ride, that just improves your health, improves your state of mind, improves your day. So they've got plenty of pre-owned vehicles for you to check out. They've been serving Waco and Central Texas for over 23 years, offering award-winning service from their collision and service center. So trust the good local people you can count on. Over 23 years right here in Central Texas, run by proud Wacoans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcar.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
It's plain and simple. Waco Custom Marketplace is the one-stop shop for what you need for tailgating, from charcoal, cold beer, and wine. And, of course, customize your order with brisket, tri-tip, sausage, wings, smoked pork tenderloin, country-style or pork spare ribs, marinated beef and chicken fajita meat, ground beef and chili, meat, hot dogs, and burgers, buns, seasoning, sauces, chips. There's fresh baked bread and kolaches every day, breakfast sausage links. And you can also customize your favorite cut of steaks from select, choice, or prime, bacon wrapped fillets, ribeyes, New York strip, sirloin, T-bone, and porterhouse. Full service butcher shop includes pork, poultry, beef, chicken, and seafood, serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. Your one-stop shop for beef, pork, poultry, and seafood needs. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year, whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Are you a Sikkim 365 superfan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
All right. Whether you're on the chat room or watching, viewing, whatever you are, even if you're listening to us online, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Garrett, get the wide shot, if you would not mind, of our set. We'll hear from Jake Hatch here in a moment. Here's the wide shot. You see the little mini helmets behind us. That's always in rotation. These are just a handful of the brand new hats. Colt Barber, we kind of put that out there about a week or so ago. These are the brand new hats, and basically of colors, and then there's a certain type of logo on the front. Great golf hats or whatever you want to do. The first two people who text 254-339-1122 get a hat. The first two, if we get 2 or 80, we're going to do the first two based on the time you come in. 254-339-1122, and then I will be in touch with you. Include your name and your mailing address. Okay? 254-339-1122, and Joel is the first one to come in, and we'll get to that. Give us your mailing address and your name, and also the 225 you're in as well. So we're done. Just like that, in 5 seconds, I'll be in touch with you, even though we will have another opportunity for you to get the hats. We appreciate that. Jake Hatch joins us. He covers the state of Utah, does a great job with that. Co-hosts a radio show as well, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Jake, what has been, thank you for your time, great to hear from you again. What has been the reaction out of Utah with what happened Thursday, and what's been the reaction, in your opinion, mainly from the University of Utah fans?
Well, I think Utah fans, like most Pac-12 fans, outside of USC and UCLA fans, are pretty apprehensive about what the future holds. We're hearing today that the Pac-12 has already authorized George Kliavkoff, their commissioner, and the rest of the brain trust there to begin TV negotiations, and I think that's them trying to head off any potential, I guess, defections from any other members of the conference. But yeah, most Utah fans right now, I think a lot of them are wondering what the future is going to hold for the Utes.
So say the Utes wind up in the Big 12 with BYU as a conference rival. How do their fans feel about that?
I think it depends on which person you ask. I think the majority of both BYU and Utah fans that actually would enjoy it. They were longtime conference rivals to the eras of the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, the WAC, the Mountain West for a long period there. They're tight at the hip. No matter what any BYU-Utah fan wants to say, these are two fan bases who cannot get enough of each other. And I, for one, would love to see them both in the conference together once again. I think that rivalry would bring a lot to the Big 12. And I think that the Big 12 as a whole would benefit from having another school or schools out here in the Intermountain West/West Coast.
Jake, how much do you buy that perhaps Utah has maybe another lifeline that isn't necessarily, or maybe other Pac-12 schools have a lifeline that isn't necessarily just the Big 12, or the Pac-12 managing a way to survive itself?
I believe that they are exploring all options. I truly believe that. I'm sure George Kliavkoff has been absolutely working around the clock to try and stabilize the now Pac-10 in the wake of USC and UCLA defecting over to the Big Ten. Obviously, I'm sure there's schools like Washington, Oregon, I'm sure Utah. Pretty much every member school of the Pac-10 right now is probably exploring all their options, making phone calls, seeing what the Big Ten got out there, seeing what the Big 12 got to offer, using back channels and all of that. But I think right now the biggest thing is I think the Pac-12 is looking at all options as being viable. I think that they will attempt in the short term to try and stabilize things with just the 10-member schools that are there right now. But should the Big Ten come calling for an Oregon/Washington combo, et cetera, you could see this really, really fall apart.
Jake, if you were the Big 12, and if there are and will be any discussions about what they want to do by looking at teams in the Pac-12, in order of those still available, what order, and even though some would not be interested, in order of which you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, how would you do that?
Do I get to include Notre Dame in all of this? Is that a viable?
No, that's obvious. Yeah.
All right. Okay, Notre Dame, obviously, okay, that one's off the table. I honestly think that it'd be Oregon and Washington be 1, 2 for me, and then I would go probably Utah, number 3. I think a lot of these schools out here in the Pac-12, the big dogs in that conference, Stanford's probably in the mix as well, even though their fan support is severely lacking. Just their overall brand and prowess, I think, would make them an attractive option. But I think the top 2 in my book, it's Oregon and Washington. They are 2 power brands, and they would bring a lot to the Big 12.
Stanford is interesting. I'm curious to hear from a Pac-12 or a person in that region about you. You mentioned they don't have a lot of fan support, but they have a lot of financial support. They're in a large TV market. They kind of match what the Big Ten is doing. Do they feel to you like Big Ten or do their own thing?
I would agree with your assessment there. I think they will chase the Big Ten until the Big Ten essentially tells them, yeah, there's not a chance you're coming in here. I think they will chase that to the ends of the earth. But I would, if I'm the Big 12, I would throw out that lifeline to any Pac-12 schools and say, hey, if you guys are interested, we're interested in talking to you. But of course, you'd be chasing the Big 4 was what I would call them. I would say it's Washington, Oregon, Utah, and Stanford. I know Colorado would have an argument considering they're a former Big 12 member. I just don't think they have the cachet that they once had. But if you're Stanford, you're chasing the Big 10 because of the overall academic affiliation, fit, all that. You chase that to the ends of the earth. But I'm just of the opinion right now that there was a report from Pete Thamel this morning, for example, saying that if USC and UCLA were intent on having some of these other big dogs in the Pac-12 come with them, they probably would have pursued that alongside in Oregon or Washington. But they made the move themselves because they want to corner the Southern California market for good reason. They want to build a wall around it as much as possible, and leaving both Washington and Oregon, Stanford, et cetera, out of the mix there gives them that much more of a stranglehold in Southern California.
Jake Hatch, the Zone Sports Network, and Utah. In your opinion, just Jake, as you, someone who covers college athletics and as a college athletics fan, what are your thoughts of what we're going through right now?
Frankly, I don't like it that much. I think we're headed towards 2 power conferences with the Big Ten and the SEC, where they're going to be the power 2. It's sad to say, but I feel like we're losing a lot of what made college football the great sport that it is. I'm feeling it more and more like it's going towards a professional model. And we already know the NFL is so corporate in so many ways that it takes away some of the thrill, I feel like, when it comes to the NFL. And I feel college football is headed that way. I am hopeful that we get to see a little more of a stabilization period once this most recent round of realignment kind of flattens out. But who knows? Because I thought that once the whole deal with the Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC kind of played out, I said, okay, we're probably pretty stable here for the next little bit. And then suddenly there was just another grenade thrown with USC and UCLA bouncing to the Big Ten. So I don't know where it ultimately is going to shake out. I'm just afraid we're going towards something where it's going to kind of ruin the fun of what college football has been for so many years.
So even if there was a little bit of Utah looking at Brigham Young like, hey, we're here and you're not, there would still be, if Brigham Young knew it would solidify the conference they're about to be a part of, they would say, okay, yeah, let's do this again with Utah?
Yeah, I believe they would. I think that the fan bases may tell you otherwise, but I know that the administrators at the 2 universities are on very good terms. They have worked together on a lot of different things. They have pretty good relationships going back to the era when they were together in the Mountain West and the WAC before that. So I actually wholeheartedly believe that BYU would endorse bringing Utah into the Big 12. I think they would be okay with that. They're not going to block it.
Hey, Jake, thank you, man. Good luck hammering away at this as well. Jake Hatch with us, who's been our guy and really have helped with what was going on when Brigham Young's name came up, which made the number 1 most sense back when the Big 12 was blindsided by Texas and Oklahoma, and now Texas and Oklahoma another year closer to wherever they're going to be, not wherever, they're going to be in the SEC, and who knows, maybe even more so. Here are the names of the first two texts, and God, I don't know if you saw the guys. The text line exploded. Joel Cadort from Mims, Florida. Paul?
Central Florida? I think it's in Central Florida.
And then Ben Allison from Shreveport, Louisiana. Thank you both for being a part, the first two of what were dozens upon dozens of texts on for the hats from Sikkim 365 Radio.
We get fan bases in places I used to live close to. I used to live in Bossier City back in the day when I was 5 to 11.
It's not the time period I would want to be if I lived in Bossier City.
Yeah.
I want to be a bit older to really enjoy Bossier City's offerings.
When you don't care about,
Yeah, you can live anywhere. Basically.
You know what? There was nothing there, and then I when I was 21, I got hired to do a stand-up gig there, and I went back and played a hotel next to a casino in Shreveport. And we're thinking, like, this city looks completely different. There were no casinos when I was
in Bossier City.
Yeah, when I was 8 years old, there was none.
Well, I can say that when you go into the state of Oklahoma now that they have, what is it? What's the name of that place that's right there? The
Choctaw?
Yeah. What's the name of the actual casino, though?
Yeah, there's the Choctaw. And
there's
the
a bunch.
The
WinStar. WinStar is one I was thinking.
It's also the
about.
legal weed place right across the way. Haven't been there, but
when we come back, we're going to discuss what's going on with Seattle, Washington, and what's happening with University of Washington fans. We'll have a co-host from KJR with our good buddy Softy, who's not available today. So what we do have available today is going to be Dick Fain from KJR, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Don's Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco. 48-foot walk-in humidor loaded with great brands of cigars, including Macanudo and Ashton, Rocky Patel, La Fontana, Cohiba, CAO, and on and on. Romeo and Julieta. They have all sorts of different, Churchill length and less. And if you want a cigar that's a little bit light or one that's a little bit more full flavor, they have that available. In fact, I was playing golf on Sunday, and I had a La Fontana Churchill, and I gave it to Ben, and Ben man, this got a little sweetness to it. And that's what the La Fontana brings to the table if that's what you decide you want to smoke. And on top of that, CBD products, including gummies that allow you and help you fall asleep a lot easier and more comfortably, so you can maybe save yourself 30, 45 minutes, an hour or two from tossing and turning, and you wake up the next morning and you're like, man, that was fantastic. Don's Humidor and Coffee Beans, Carol, Ashley, and Cheyenne in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Payments for qualified buyers are 2.9% for 72 with 5,000 down cash or trade. TTL or see dealer for details. Step up your ride at Richard Carr's Summer Savings Event. Find summer savings like a 2018 GMC Sierra SLT, only $432 a month, or a 2017 Buick Encore for $183 a month, or GMC Acadia for only $280 a month. Our vehicles go through a 172-point inspection. We pay top dollar for your trade, and 100% approval is always our goal. Find your next car or truck today at Richard Carr.
At Richard Carr, we give you more.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance, and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com, or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Did you know that Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness is a partner of the City of Waco? Did you know that we are open to the public? Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers day passes to the public for only $10 a day, and we offer money-saving memberships. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including bar, yoga, boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. There are free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, elliptical machines, and much more on the spacious weight room floor. Personal training available where you can be encouraged to grow. Sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. 17 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Waco's premier experience where you can help your mind, body, and soul. Visit our website at wacotennis.com. Call us at 254-753-7675 or visit us next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Jet motion they go with here with Baldwin. And Baldwin breaks free. And the Bears, Sikkim, Monterey Baldwin.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Dick Fain, KJR Radio in Seattle, joins us. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Dick, thank you for the time. We appreciate it. What has been the reaction to Thursday's news with USC and UCLA when it comes to the state of Washington, especially with Washington fans?
I would say trepidation and hope are probably words that normally aren't used in the same sentence, but I think those are the two words, because I think originally they obviously see that the house that they've been living in for 100 years crumbling around them, and yet they see the hope to, hey, wait a second, there's a lot nicer, bigger house right over here. We just have to ask if we can come in and shack over here. And so if they're led into that other house, I think it's going to be very profitable and very beneficial for Huskies.
Why do you think that USC and UCLA didn't loop them in the first place? Given, look, it's a great academic institution. It's in Seattle. It's everything's pretty good there, even when it's bad. I mean, so why not get looped in the first place?
I think that there was probably discussions. I think that the Big Ten would have had to give USC and UCLA some sort of assurances that they would not be playing every single road game 1,500 to 3,000 miles away from home. I just don't see how that's feasible. And so that's why, since this came down, the most logical, natural next step to this whole thing is that Washington, Oregon, Stanford, and Cal join with USC and UCLA. And that might not, I don't think USC and UCLA necessarily wanted to share the spotlight with those other West Coast schools. I mean, would you? I mean, if you're USC athletic director, if you're UCLA athletic director, do you want to be just a part of a big group that goes to the Big Ten? Or do you want to make national headlines that say, we're the two schools that the Big Ten wants, we're heading over, and no mention of the other schools, and yet behind the scenes, there might be some conversation about the other schools, because it's beneficial to you as a USC AD, as a UCLA AD, that you have at least some other West Coast schools that you can play for road games.
Dick, I don't know if you've seen the reports. I guess the last couple of hours, there's been talk about all sorts of things the Pac-12 might be trying to pull, and one of those includes an alliance with an unnamed conference. That would seem to indicate the ACC, seeing as the Big 12 is the one that's rumored to be plucking away teams or trying to pluck away teams. Would you be at all hesitant with an alliance given, well, I don't know, what we've just seen happen as of last week?
Yeah, as a Washington fan, I want no part of an alliance. If the rest of the Pac-12 If the rest of the Pac-12 wants to partner up with the ACC, go for it. But I want to leave. I want to leave. I want to go to the Big Ten. I want to be a part of one of the two superpowers in college football. There are only, the writing's on the wall, right? 5-10 years from now, there's probably only going to be two conferences anyway. There's going to be the Fox Conference and the ESPN Conference. So you got to pick which one you're going to be in. And the Pac-12 and the Big 12 right now are left with no true national superpowers. As schools. You've got regional superpowers in the Big 12. You got regional superpowers in the Pac-10, but you don't have any national pillars in either one of those conferences. So they're going to split apart, and it's just a matter of now. The first step of that may be the West Coast schools that I just mentioned going to the Big 10, and everyone else going to the Big 12, because the Big 12 would add some pretty significant television cities. You'd add Salt Lake, you'd add Denver, you'd add Phoenix. You've got some pretty significant eyeballs, and it kind of makes sense, right? The Big 12 pairing with Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado make a hell of a lot more sense than the Big 12 pairing with Washington and Oregon. That doesn't make much sense at all for Washington. It doesn't make much sense for the Big 12, other than the fact that Washington and Oregon would be maybe probably your two biggest football schools at this point, sans Texas and Oklahoma. So I think whatever happens in the short run with the Big 12 and the Pac-12, we're just kind of biding our time, aren't we? I just feel like we're just kind of biding our time until you have all the requisite schools in the SEC, all the requisite schools in the Big Ten, and then everybody else is probably fighting for a secondary division of college football.
Yeah, I've been saying that we need to know what Notre Dame wants to do. That's first, and then we need to figure out what is what with this contract in the ACC and what's actually feasible and what's just, people on Twitter saying, hey, it'd be great if Clemson joined the SEC next year. But without those answers, yeah, it's pretty cloudy, isn't it?
Right. Well, if you're Clemson, why wouldn't you, right?
Sure.
If you're Clemson, the writing's on the wall. It's like, we got to get out of here. This is turning into there's two lifeboats left, and we got to jump on one of them if you're Clemson. So I imagine I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Clemson leaving for the SEC very soon.
How many teams, Dick, that none of us know, but how many teams do you think will end up being a part of these two mega conferences that compete for their own national championship? Will it be 32? Will it be 48? Well, how many will it be?
Well, I think, what's interesting is, and I've brought this up a time or two in the past, and our friend John Wilner from the Mercury News, who broke this whole thing, he's a weekly guest on our show, and he's brought it up as well. The thought of, I know anything related to the English Premier League and soccer like 20 years ago would have been absolutely a non-starter in America, but nowadays soccer isn't necessarily like the bad word that it was 15, 20 years ago. And so this whole concept of relegation, this whole concept of you have an A league in college football and you have a B league in college football, and the teams at the top end of the B league, if you show that you are competitive enough in your league and you're raising enough revenue, you could potentially move up to the A league. And if you're in the A league and you suck for 2 or 3 years in a row, you could potentially be pushed down to the B league. I think that's highly intriguing. I think that's intriguing for the top, and whatever the number the number may start at 36 or what have you in these two leagues. And if you're competitive enough, it gives teams ranked 37 to 45 some hope, right? Something to play for. And then at the same time, it motivates those teams. Look at Maryland, look at Rutgers. Do they really belong in the Big Ten more than a school like Baylor belongs in the Big Ten? Should they be recognized more than one of your schools down in Texas? Absolutely not. Texas Tech's a better school than freaking Maryland and Rutgers. So is Baylor. So if you have a situation where you can lose your spot by not producing, and you can also gain a spot if you do produce in the secondary league, I think that's highly intriguing.
Dick, do you find it strange that this college football is kind of the only sport that does not care what its fans really want? I mean, this really just started with, could we have more teams in the playoff? And it was morphed into, well, why don't we do this instead?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, if fans got their way, if a majority, not every fan's different, but if I think if a majority of fans got their way, you wouldn't be able to transfer every single year. You wouldn't have anything other than NILs that were specifically for players that had already spent a year or two at the university and guaranteed them 1 or 2 more years at the university, because you want to root for your team, right? You want to root for the players on your team for 4 and 5 years. That's what we grew up loving college football for, because we knew who the recruits were, and we knew 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, they were still going to be on your football team, and you had something to look forward to, because you're like, damn, we just got the 12th best recruiting class in America. We might have a chance for a conference championship 3 years from now. And now it's like, what does it matter what your recruiting class is? I mean, it's not totally irrelevant, but then also what the fans would want is they'd want the Pac-12 teams on the West Coast. They'd want the Big 12 teams in Texas and Oklahoma and that area. They'd want the Big 10 teams in the Midwest. You'd want the Power 5 conferences as has been constructed, but then you would want, actually, here's an idea. Every single one of the Power 5 conferences actually gets into the playoffs if they win the conference championship game. What a phenomenal idea. I don't know why anybody hasn't thought of that before, guys, that you would actually have 5 power conferences where each conference was guaranteed a spot in the playoffs.
Yeah, it almost makes so much sense. It's scary that it doesn't. That it doesn't happen. You know, there was a time, no question, and I do have a great respect for Washington's football history, the national title team, and James, the head coach, and others. But they have been kind of hit and miss. And you mentioned earlier that Washington and Oregon would be the biggest football programs in the Big 12 if they join the conference. Do you feel like that's the case right now with what Baylor's done, Oklahoma State's done, et cetera?
I think those are the other 2 schools that you're talking about. There's no question. I think it goes beyond, though, necessarily just what the schools have done in the last 10 years. I mean, Oregon is, Oregon can fly a pretty good flag for what they've done over the last 15 years in college football, probably more so than Baylor and Oklahoma State, I would think. Washington probably is right there with those 2 teams as far as recent history over the last 10, 15 years. Washington does have the tradition, but what Washington also has is the 12th biggest television market in America, and it also has a lot of money, a lot of potential, eyeballs and sponsorship dollars. The Seattle market has never been hotter. It's continued to get hot ever since the start of Microsoft, and it just continued with Starbucks and Costco and Amazon and just on and on and on and on and on. And so I think that would be that adds to. I guess I'd call that the tiebreaker. Like if Washington's tied with Baylor and Oklahoma State over the last 20 years in football prowess, and I'd have to go back and look exactly how it is, but it's close enough, right? Then I think Seattle would hold that tiebreaker.
How much of the Seattle market does college football get?
I would say most people in the Seattle market are either Huskies or Cougars. Not necessarily that they necessarily graduated from both of those teams, but almost everybody that's a football fan in the Western Washington is a Husky fan or a Cougar fan. And so, it's pick your side. Usually if you're a Cougar fan, you either went there or you grew up in Central Washington or Eastern Washington, somewhere east of the mountains. 90% of those people are Cougar fans. 90%. But there's also only like a quarter, like not even a quarter of the state's population over there too. I mean, 80% of your state's population is on this side of the mountain. So therefore, 80% of your fans are probably going to be Husky fans. And, we're bandwagon fans. I'm sure you've talked to Softy about this, no matter what sport you're talking about. We're very bandwagon here in Seattle. We do have hardcore fan base in every sport. But for the most part, if the Seahawks are great, there's no better fan base in America, no louder fan base in America. The 12s are going crazy. And if the Seahawks aren't great, like they were last year, hey, look, guess what? There were 7,000 empty seats in some games. All the seats got sold because nobody wants to give up their season tickets. but they didn't go to the games. So, and it's that way for Husky Stadium as well. It's one of the things that I rail about the most on the air is the bandwagon nature of the Northwest sports fan, and it pretty much goes all the way up and down the West Coast. I have a great deal of respect for Texas football fans because you know what? You're football fans. You're going to go to a high school game if the school's 3-8. You're still going to go. I mean, that's what you do. And so I got a great deal of respect for people like that.
Hey, Dick, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Dick Fain, again, KJR in Seattle, co-host with our good friend Dave Softy Mahler, giving us a feedback. And for those on the chat room that have comments about our guest and you don't like the opinion or this and that, and I followed up about the Oregon and Washington football history, or not history, but current, where they stand. We are today bringing you 3 different cities' perspective. Seattle, because of the obvious, Utah, the state, because of the obvious, and also earlier out of the Phoenix and Tucson area because of the obvious, to give us a little bit of what they're thinking there and what the reaction's been. Craig's off the radar around the corner. Sam Bradshaw will join us a little bit after 5 today on just some thoughts about what else is available TV markets of those who might now become free agents.
Well, and we got to update what's actually going on. I mean, because, we're sitting here talking as though it's the information from yesterday, and there are several reports out there now that the Pac-12, and I know that John Wilner's one of those, that's talking about, some sort of an agreement with the ACC, some sort of a partnership that would see, those two go coast to coast, the remaining Pac-12 schools, whoever that would be, and the remaining ACC schools. And again, this is why I would be very curious to know what that grant of rights actually means for the ACC. I've been saying that all show, and that's why I still want to know, what can be gotten out of and what is ironclad. But certainly the ACC and the Pac-12, if that were to ring true and they were to join up, I mean, then the Big 12 suddenly finds itself from a position of power to once again being the last on the totem pole again, and all of a sudden looking around and not having any options versus what it's appeared to have been the last 3-4 days, where they could have their choice of 4, they could have their choice of 6, perhaps, if Oregon and Washington don't get that Big 10 invite. I mean, that's why you got to be careful with everything that's said on social media, because if I went off, one guy in particular, then, you would have had, there's going to be a 64-team SEC. And then another guy says, well, they're going to do this, but they're not going to allow these schools. And I mean, there's just so much stuff. And look, all the speculation's fun. That's what we're doing. That's what the chat room's doing and all of that. But you do have to be careful with some of it because we've already basically read the Pac-12 their last rights. And hell, they may be in a stronger position when all is said and done. Now, you asked me at the start of the show who's in a better position. Right now, I still maintain that it's the Big 12. But if the Pac-12 were to come to an agreement with the ACC, well, then that completely flips everything. And suddenly the Big 12 is not necessarily, really any worse off, quite frankly, because they're still adding new teams next year, and we already knew they were losing Oklahoma and Texas. It would just mean they would be the smallest conference. It means they would be by themselves without any partner or super conference of sorts. But, that's why you got to, just see how things play out, because this is very fluid. And I've seen 15 different predictions for what's going to happen with Oregon alone in the last 48 hours, and none of them have turned true yet, so we'll see.
The weird thing to me about a Pac-12 ACC alliance, and if I'm Clemson, and that's on the table, I don't know if that's keeping me from just going to the SEC, because last year I wanted a Pac-12 SEC alliance if I'm Clemson, because that means that I can go into California and say, hey, guess what? We're going to play some games in L.A. where they're recruiting quarterbacks and, wide receivers and players out of generally. Now you can't promise them a game in L.A. unless they wind up in the Rose Bowl, or
whatever's left of the Rose Bowl.
To me, that's it. I know the move to make is to stave off contraction of your conference, but is it something that's really going to do that? Because if you are the premier team, if you're Washington and Oregon, if you're Washington, Oregon, Stanford, the teams that Dick just talked about, does playing games in North Carolina really do anything for you other than, again, keep you on life support for a little while longer until the big teams in your league figure out a way to leave anyway? I think you need to necessarily, if you're going to make a move that you think is going to be a reasonable counterpunch.
Well, obviously, we've mentioned some of what's going on today, and including Craig's monitoring that as well. The chat room is going ballistic throughout from start to finish, thanks to almost at one point 2,600 of you that were watching and viewing us online. We appreciate that. And then also those online. I did talk to one of the partners earlier over the weekend about the app that's being rebuilt. We're supposed to, and we hope to have that up and running sometime by early August when all the workouts begin in football. But that's just something that had to be done. The timing would never be good, but it would be better to do it now than it might God during football season when I would want to just lose my mind. All right, it's 4:38, Craig, and Off the Radar. Coming up next, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress. I will see him in probably a couple of months. I got teeth cleaning coming up. In fact, Paul brought up that he's got an appointment to have something like that with a dentist coming up here at the end of the week as well. Today? Oh, it was earlier today. And I got to tell you something. When you're at my age, there are things, of course, if you didn't take care of your body that will start to come back to hurt you, including, and I admit this, the dentist office to me was just something that I just, for whatever reason, and mainly because I always was worried about, oh, you got a cavity. Here's a needle. And I got nervous about that. Then it got worse, and then I stopped seeing a dentist completely, and now I'm paying for it. But, man, I feel so much better about where I am with my teeth. In fact, a couple of new crowns are going to be put in sometime by the end of the year after getting implants a little bit back a couple of months ago. Dr. Steve Childress and Stonewood Dental, they are amazing. What they do and how they handle the patients, incredible. And maybe you're looking for one in the Waco area or for somebody new. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Sausage wrap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
It's summertime. There's picnics, reunions, cookouts, and so much to do. And Waco Custom Marketplace on Lake Air Drive in Waco is your home for the butcher shop that can help you with beef, pork, poultry, and seafood. They are spectacular at being able to deliver you whatever cut of steak you want. Bone-in ribeye, however thick you want it, that's great. They'll do it. Sirloin, T-bone, porterhouse, bacon-wrapped filet. And, of course, as I mentioned, they have pork, poultry, and seafood. Their Norwegian salmon is spectacular. Also, all of the sauces and seasonings you'll ever need, all the ingredients you'll ever need to make sure you have that perfect, flawless taste. So it's delicious whenever you take something off the grill. And a full-fledged bakery as well with fresh baked bread and kolaches every single day. Up and down the aisle of Waco Custom Marketplace, you also have what you need from knickknacks to snacks to more at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, Waco Custom Marketplace.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. It's time for Craig Smoak's Off the Radar. Brought to you by Pickup Outfitters. Since 1997, we've been outfitting trucks, SUVs, and vans at 220 Lake Air Drive or createacommotion.com.
In lieu of Off the Radar, like we did Thursday when the USC and UCLA story popped, we're going to take your calls if you want right now. It's all about the college football landscape and potential of what happens next. Who adds next? Who loses next? What else is next? What's Notre Dame going to do? Who is the next team that the SEC or teams SEC or Big Ten add if they do? And your thoughts at 254-339-1122. That's the one topic right now. 254-339-1122. Give us your opinion. Make it short, but also make sure you get in what you want, and we will take your calls at 254-339-1122. One note about over the weekend with college football recruiting. Baylor landed Zay Robinson, who, if his number or his value right now stays the same, young man from Lamar High School in Arlington, if he stays at that number, he will be the highest ranked offensive lineman that Baylor has recruited. And the last one in that same neighborhood of where he's ranked nationally, where he's ranked among his offensive line position, was Spencer Drangle from Cedar Park down near Austin, which was a big-time land for Baylor back, I think, in 2011, was a part of their Big 12 championship teams as well. Notre Dame added four-star cornerback Christian Gray out of St. Louis. Miami has flipped some people. Georgia, Clemson, they picked up an offensive lineman from IMG, the number 5 overall player. Texas added Mitchell, the defensive lineman, a 4-star out of New Jersey. These are just some of them. In Arkansas, I saw where they picked up Micah Teese, 4-star athlete from Tulsa. I think Booker T. Washington there. Those are just some of those that happened over the weekend as well. 254-339-1122. Man, I can't keep up. Woodchuck Nation, 4 conferences, 18 each, 10-team playoff, 4 champs, 2 second places, 2 at large. And really, you know what? Until we know where this thing, when the dust settles, it's almost not your opinion being silly or your comment. I had earlier someone talked about the pods in whatever conferences. To me, that's almost irrelevant.
Yeah, who cares about pods right now?
Right now, because
doesn't matter.
That's what I was saying.
It doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. I know it really. And that's not. With all due respect, it really is almost irrelevant until we find out how many teams are in each of the conferences.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, we could schedule out the Big 12 for the next 5 years, but can you tell me who's actually in the conference?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
so what's the point? And no, I mean, I get that the pod thing was really fun, especially a couple weeks ago, especially for the last couple months. Everybody talking about what's the SEC schedule going to be and all this other jazz. But, I mean, given the recent news, again, who's in what conference? Is the SEC done? Is the Big Ten done? I mean, I don't think so. So, so if we're talking pods, okay, we got the current pods. It was 14 last week. Now it's at least 16 for one of them. It's going to be probably 18 to 20 if you ask some people. Some people predict 24. Some people say 28. Some people say there's no way there could only be like 40 to 50. So, again, there's a lot of noise and a lot of predictions, but I think there's a very few and far between group that actually knows what's going on. And I think even that group is still a little unsure of what exactly is going on right now.
The ACC is such a wild card in this, because if you're telling me I'm Clemson, I'm Florida State, I'm North Carolina, big brands, Miami that has cachet, but not necessarily a big school, but big brands, and you're telling me as I'm trying to reinvest into my athletic programs that I'm going to get $35 million and my rival school Like in Florida State and Miami's case, if I'm looking across in Gainesville, Florida, they're still going to get $100 million, and I'm just going to sit there and wait for 13 years. To me, it doesn't make any sense. If I'm Clemson and I've been recruiting and playing and in certain cases beating Alabama, but I know that I'm going to get 35 and they're going to get 100 for the next few years, I'm not going to sit and wait. I've got to figure something out, because that TV deal is an albatross for them, and they've got to figure that out, because is playing Washington once every 7 years gonna make the $70 million gap close? Probably damn not. So the ACC it could really mess things up here if they decide, hey, especially the big teams in that, we've got to go to the SEC and Big Ten ourselves.
Or they align with the Pac-12, and then everything you've scheduled out is garbage anyways, because now you suddenly have to factor in cross-conference scheduling, and I'm sure that wouldn't be so hard to probably do in the grand scheme of things compared to a lot of the other stuff we're talking about. But, that's what I'm saying. Just everything's too fluid. Like, hey, pods sound great, but, again, we don't have the details on what exactly we're scheduling for. Are we scheduling for a 16-team conference? Are we scheduling for an 18, a 20? When does this start? Who's involved? Like, can you ensure that they're involved? That's the thing. And right now, we don't even, I think Notre Dame's as big of a domino as you're going to find in this, but we don't know the fate of the Pac-12 yet. The fate of the Pac-12 has changed in my mind just since the show started. And we've been on the air for almost 2 hours at this point, and it's already changed. They look dead as a doornail at the beginning of this show. An hour and a half in, and you got John Canzano and John Wilner and every other Pac-12 guy. There's, depending on where you look, there's this alliance suddenly with the ACC. And I know that wasn't exactly like brand new information, but there does seem now to be, hey, maybe there's a little smoke to that. Maybe there is a little something to that. So, depending on when you look up, I thought, if you base it off social media, a lot of people seem to think that Notre Dame would have a decision today just because it would be the polite thing to do. And they kind of know that they're holding everybody, over the fire right now, because it's kind of hard to know what's going to happen next until they decide what they're going to do, because their decision matters that much. But yeah,
when have they ever cared?
No, I know, but it's fascinating, just all the moving parts and all of just the talk it generates. It's amazing.
We are now ready to take your calls. 254-339-1122. Paul handles that. We appreciate your time, and we'll try to take at least a handful of calls here over the next 8 to 10 minutes. Paul?
Al from Hollywood. Thanks for your call. You're on Sikkim 365 Radio.
Yeah, basically, I'm just thinking, how does this all work? And I realize college football wants to keep all their money and not deal with the minor sports. So talk about where the season is all year long. It's from August to June. And you have games every other week. For example, how does UCLA go to Purdue and then, come back and the travel? I was just thinking for injuries and travel, games are every other week. Every game's on national TV, and you just screw the other little minor sports, and football is college football is a year-round sport. Thanks for taking my call.
Al, thanks for the call. The only problem with that is Title IX, right?
Well, that, and I don't think you want to play football year-round.
No, I know, but one of the things you're talking about, intervention immediately because of
that's the thing.
Incredible
you break away from the NCAA
yeah.
and Title IX, Schmeitel 9. Like, it doesn't matter. That's kind of where some of the thought process is, oh my gosh, does Alabama realize what they're going to do to beach volleyball? I don't think Alabama gives a damn about some West Coast school's beach volleyball program.
Well, if you also, in a practical sense, not in a, theoretical or what's, right and perfectly even, if you take football out of the Title IX equation, it makes it easier for you to work Title IX.
Yeah. You don't have 80-something guys.
85 on scholarship or whatever the number is. 254-339-1122. Quick comment.
I do think, to your point, that, college football has become more year-round. I don't think you would be to where you're playing every other week and spreading it out that much. I just think, when you got obligations like the NFL draft, for example, and all the other things, and plus just wanting to have an off-season, I don't think that's realistic. But to your point, college football is year-round now. As far as the news cycle goes. We've had, how many months now? We're in 6 months since the season ended. Has it slowed down even a little bit?
No.
Not even a single second has it slowed down between recruiting and NIL and legislation and the super conferences and transfer, like all that jazz, like it's pretty much a year-round sport now at this point. Maintaining your roster is certainly a year-round sport. So that's an interesting thought. I think there probably are going to be some formats that people try to tinker around and play with because, I mean, why not? Everything else is basically new and trying things new. So that's interesting. But, yeah, I don't see the whole year-round part other than the news cycle, which it's already there.
John in Long Beach. Lots of California today. Thanks for your call. You're on Second 365.
Good afternoon, guys. I just wanted to chime in. I'm hearing a lot of slamming of the Pac-12, and I just wanted to point out, if we were to add 4 teams like Utah State, Fresno, San Diego, and Boise, which actually have essentially the same records as the 4 teams that have been added to the Big 12 over the last decade, I even sent to your Instagram so you can see the numbers side by side. It will eliminate a lot of feelings that people have. They got to look at the facts. If those 4 teams are sent to the Big 12, make them stronger and give you guys stability, why wouldn't those teams do the same for the Pac-12? Boise comes right in. And as a matter of fact, they've beaten BYU like 8 of the last 12 times. So you got to take that in consideration.
Yeah,
thanks a lot, guys. I'll listen up.
Yeah, John, thanks for the call. We appreciate
sorry,
it.
go ahead.
Again, the problem is not whether Boise has beaten Brigham Young or whoever it is. It's all about what does it bring to the television-type contract. And the other thing is this. That might make the Pac-12 stronger, but does that make them stronger enough to survive what is the future of what we're seeing now with a possible mega conference championship?
Well, I mean, if I look at it this way, for one, yeah, the winning doesn't matter at all. Like, Boise could beat BYU 20 years in a row, and it's not going to give them an inside edge to the Pac-12 because it's just ultimately not what it's about. If it was about winning, then you wouldn't have all the big programs breaking off because not all of them are winning right now. And as a matter of fact, I think that's part of what drove a Texas, for example, off is you've got more money than God, and yet a little bit of that you give to the Baylors of the world, and then they turn around and beat you with it. And they're tired of that, for one, amongst being tired of other things, having to give that little bit of an amount to a school that's, smaller than them, all that. But yeah, it's not about winning. If it was about winning, then Baylor would securely be in a Super 2. But it's about far more than that. They're too small at the moment, that they're not in that same type of mix that some of these bigger programs are. And that's why they're probably on the outside looking in along with a lot of others.
If it was about winning, then Oklahoma, yeah, you've won the conference a bunch of times, coming to the SEC. Tell us who you want to bring with us, but they've got to have won in the last decade. It wouldn't have been Texas because Texas has been largely irrelevant.
It was down to wins and losses in football,
yeah. But yeah, it's not about that. And Texas, again, it wasn't about winning for them in the SEC. They know that it could be potentially downhill for a little bit for them.
Yeah, to your point, though, about the teams being added, that's been thrown around. That seems like a good enough idea, but it's not really our opinion. It's the TV networks. And if the TV networks don't feel like Boise adds a whole bunch of new households to the Pac-12, and certainly not enough to fill the shoes of any combination you want to throw out there, San Diego State, Boise State, UNLV, whoever, it would take like 15 of those teams to equal UCLA and USC. So in theory, yeah, you can do it, but then what you're doing is you're making less money, and now you have more teams to split that between. So I don't know if you're Oregon, if you're all on board of like, yeah, let's bring in 4 brand new teams, make tens of millions of dollars less than we were making, and now splitting it with teams who are, depending on how you look at it, below us. And that's where I think, Oregon and Washington would have to think long and hard about what that would actually look like.
All right, Jordan in Evansville, Indiana. Jordan, thanks for your call.
Hi, thank you, guys. I got one quick statement and one quick question. My first statement is I hope the conferences choose mergers over one annex and the other, because I really like the brands of the Pac-12 and the Big 12. And, if you merge them, you've got one division on the West as the Pac, one in the Midwest as the Big 12. The champions play each other, and you got a ball game like you got now. My question is, when are we going to start seeing some of these teams kicked out of conferences? Because let's be honest, if you're the SEC and you're bringing in all these big brands, you don't want a Vanderbilt in there. And if they start kicking out, we start seeing like a Vanderbilt or a Minnesota or Northwestern kicked out, that could help backfill some of these other conferences. Thank you.
Well, don't forget, Jordan, about...
Great, thanks for the call.
Yeah. I don't think it's about kicking people out because you kind of need a Vanderbilt on your schedule, 1. And 2, there's academic money that's involved in this as well. And the schools like Vanderbilt and Northwestern bring in a ton of academic money in these partnerships. So I know that none of this is on the surface about academics, because it's about football and TV contracts right there is why they're moving. But that part of it is enormous. And that's why the Big Ten didn't just go willy-nilly and add certain schools of all the big brands or of all, certain places because they want certain academic. UCLA and USC are there because they're good academic schools too. So that's a big part of it. There's a lot of research dollars going through.
Again, we've mentioned this many times, that makes the Southeastern Conference, the SEC, so powerful is no matter if they hate each other, Auburn, Alabama, whoever, they have always been what's best for us is also we need Vanderbilt or whoever, Mississippi State. It's something the Big 12 could never understand until perhaps now going into the future in a couple of years. 254-339-1122.
Thing is, if you're Vanderbilt, what's really changing? You're just making more money to be the stump that everybody kicks on their schedule. And I know that they've had years where they've been successful because then we get into that. But, for the most part, they are the team that gets beat up on by the Alabamas and the Georgias and all of that, and they make a good penny to do that, and they get to brag about their academics, and they get to, get a win on occasion. So ultimately, why would you leave that now? It's already pretty much what your reality is, much less now you're making maybe an extra zero on the end of what you already were. That'll go to academics, and it'll go to facilities and go to all of that. But, yeah, I've seen that floated around of, teams just getting tired of losing, but money talks. Money's the driving factor, and all of this, and when you're a team that's already been losing a bunch anyways, again, what changes for you, and is it worth it? That's what I'm going to be fascinated to see is which one of these programs that is going to be in this upper echelon, in Oklahoma, for example, that's maybe not winning as much as they were accustomed to. How much does that matter if you're, making $100 million more than you were? And is it an easier pill to go down? Hey, yeah, we're losing a couple extra games a year, and we're not really getting to the playoff on a regular basis, but we're in the SEC, and we're safe, and we're making a lot of money. For some fans, that'll be enough. For some, it won't because you're going to miss that winning, I guarantee you. But that safety net and that security of being in that conference is, it's better than the alternative of going and winning a bunch but not making very much money or having much security.
I know this is far-fetched, but God knows if anything anymore is far-fetched. One of the things that created a problem in the Big 12 was eventually how Texas was making more money, was getting more money, as Oklahoma was, than most everybody else, right? And then eventually that, it broke up 2 or 3 times, and then now it's equal. Can you see a major, if we end up with 2, can you see any way at all the Big Ten or the SEC adding teams, whoever they might be, another 2 or 4 or none or 8, and saying, we will do this, or having some sort of you have a pecking order of what teams make? Now, I know that sounds like that's completely why a conference would have problems, but can we see that you end up more money with others in the conference?
Are you saying Alabama makes $100 million and Vanderbilt makes 25?
I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference, but is there any chance we could see that in the future?
Sure, because it's being widely talked about with how you're going to potentially get Washington and Oregon into the Big Ten. Remember some of the scuttlebutt that we've thrown around there that's been out there amongst millions of other opinions on college realignment is, well, what if you did it to where Oregon and Washington come in, but they don't make the same amount of money. Just like the Big 12's new members don't make the same amount of money right away.
Yeah. I'm talking about initially, but then this is the way it's going to be.
To what extent, though? Because if I'm Vanderbilt, I will take probably some slight cut, maybe, and I won't be the only one doing it. That's for damn sure. Who else is also doing this? And tell me the valid reasons for why. And if it's hey, you're not pulling as much weight in football, then okay, and give me charts and explain it all to me. But I'm not going to be the only one doing this, and how extreme are we talking?
And if that happens, then you lose what has been the soul of the SEC.
I'm glad you came around to that, because the fact that the SEC would even consider it means that somehow Texas's Big 12 BS has infected them.
I remember I said it, and I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, but they might look. And if they did that, and if I'm Vanderbilt, I'm saying, what the hell? No, hold on. This whole thing was based on the fact that we're even. And if we're going to be like them, then why do we do all this?
254-339-1122, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports.
All right, a couple more real quick. Let's go to Timothy in Lubbock. You're on Sikkim 365 Radio.
Yeah, how you doing today?
Doing great, Timothy. Thanks for your time and call.
Okay, I got something for y'all I want y'all to think about. So we got all this confusion about everything that everybody wants to do. Have y'all ever imagined Texas and Oklahoma went to the SEC, but what if Notre Dame chose to change the whole game and join the Big 12 so they can be the main attraction in the Big 12, and getting somebody like Utah or Colorado or maybe Utah and Oregon, and so you got Notre Dame, Utah, and Oregon, because remember, the dude from Rock Nation is coming. From what I heard, he's a billionaire. Like, from what I heard, he has a lot of money. So what if the game changed? Nobody's even thinking about this. They talk about Notre Dame being a big piece. But what if Notre Dame actually said, you know what, we could do something with the Big 12 and change the whole game up? Have y'all ever even thought about that?
You know, Craig brought it up earlier, is that everybody's kind of waiting, and thanks for your call, Timothy. But I think for Notre Dame to do that, they would have to be guaranteed to be making as much money as they would in any other place they went. So they'd have to get that money. Plus, the Big 12, though, the Big 12 would probably be the conference that would provide them that landing spot and let them have their own TV deal. What would happen with Notre Dame if they went in the Big 10 or the SEC is their little exclusivity with NBC goes away as soon as that contract's up.
Maybe.
Maybe. Or
you negotiate it to where NBC's a part of it, and you get like a little, hey, this is Notre Dame exception here, because they're going to bring all this money, so they get this exception, and they're the only ones that can get this one, but they can because of the NBC deal. But yeah,
but I mean, they and again, Notre Dame, if they figure they don't really even have to do this, no matter if they're super conferences, if it can be 68 teams and Notre Dame with their own rules, Notre Dame's going to do that.
Notre Dame's not going to go into a conference or join a conference until it's to a point where they have no other choice, and they might never get to that point.
Yeah, and I actually have seen, a little scuttlebutt and giving it some thought. I mean, the Big 12 would have to make so many concessions. I don't even know how the Big 12 would make any money. They would have to give so many concessions to Notre Dame to convince them. They'd have to say, like, you're getting a 95% chunk of the TV deal. Guys, they'd have to do that, because where else are they going to get the money to even match what Notre Dame could potentially make elsewhere, right? So you'd basically have to give up all that you're worth just to satisfy them enough to join the conference, and I don't know what that does for the rest of them. Like, yes, that would flip everything on its head, like you said, but it just doesn't seem all that realistic, because they don't have any, rivals like they would in the Big Ten currently, or like the ones they could make in the ACC or have in the ACC. The Big 12 is just kind of, I don't know, man. It's in a weird spot right now with the Pac-12 stuff swirling and the ACC alliance talking all that. I mean, the Big 12 is in a really precarious position, and not necessarily one with a strong hand. Even if they might have had it just 24 hours ago, they don't necessarily do it right now. I don't think that's enough for, again, the Notre Dame for the Big 12 to be attractive. They're just not attractive enough, or they have enough ammo.
We need to take a break. When we come back, Sam Bradshaw, he's kind of really good at breaking down football during the season, but also very much involved in data and stats and others. And he's writing, I think, a piece here pretty soon about markets and all of that. And so I said, hey, Sam, you want to come on for a little bit and kind of give us an idea about all of these things that are on the table or might be. So I don't know where we're going to go with it, but he's next. Sick on 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. Easy to talk about them because they've been in business, and they are bigger, better, faster, and stronger than they have ever been, and they've always been really good, no matter the ups and downs of what's happening with the country, the economy, the stock market, or distribution. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, with locations in Waco and Bryan, a brand new facility going up right now in Waco that will only make them better, and they have been in business since 1943. There are, in many towns, in many places, when a big box store that does everything, like a Walmart or whatever, comes into a town, there's a chance that a locally owned company that's been around for a long, long time cannot keep up because they don't have that ability to have as many parts or to have the price lower. And they're gone, just like that. You close the doors, they walk away. Pioneer Steel and Pipe has said, heck, we have steel, we have metal, we have pipe. We're going to be as tough as that is. And they have survived and gotten better. Better and better because they treat you, the customer, like you're the only customer, and yet also continually keep up with the times when it comes to pricing and distribution. They're building a brand new facility, and they're doing that right now in Waco. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, locations in Waco and Bryan at pioneerboys.com.
The secret to living your best life is pizza, obviously. Golden crust made from scratch, 3 fresh signature cheeses, and the toppings, crispy old world pepperoni, savory Italian sausage, bacon. That's called a dream team. Find everything you need to live your best life and more at Marco's Pizza. Owner Bob Mock has been delivering pizza since 2001 and is the proud owner of 4 locations in Waco, Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and soon to be open in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jeweler, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. This is a great time for your business.
Exactly. And one other thing we do that a lot of people don't know is we buy jewelry, heirloom pieces, gold, silver bars, gold bullion, watches, anything you may have that you want to. If you don't want to use it and remake something like I did in a state yesterday and I looked at 35 pieces, well, they're probably going to sell me back 30 because it's something they're not going to wear, nothing to use. So if you're looking to get a few bucks or to sell something or something you just don't wear anymore, I make my wife go through her jewelry box about every 6 to 8 months, and the things that she doesn't wear on a daily basis, this sounds horrible, but I take away from her and then I'll put in my estate counter, but then that gives me the chance to rebuy her something new moving forward. Instead of looking down 20 years down the road and you have 300 pieces of jewelry, it's something to refresh and make her buy something new along the way.
You want to know why they're successful? Brad Boozer, the owner of Boozer's Jewelers on the corner of Valley Mills and Lake Air in Waco.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible and rewarding challenge. Hi, everyone. This is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like mortgage lending, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
And an interesting fake. It worked. It's a touchdown to Ben Simmons. Just love the poise of this young quarterback.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Tom Albers, staying in touch with you and your money through these difficult and changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
We have so many.
Here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
We have so many different analysts and writers and columnists that cover many things of what we do on Sikkim365.com. We wish, if you wanted, to get in there and be a premium subscriber. We appreciate that. And they're a part of the umbrella of what we do. Sam Bradshaw breaks down a lot of things when it comes to opponents that Baylor's about to play and looking back at other things they do. He wrote this in the premium section. Post your TV rating questions. I have recently updated the data going back to 2011, and a few articles he's about to write on the new Big 12 and how leagues stack up and the USC and UCLA impact, etc. Sam Bradshaw joins us now on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Sam, I want to start with this one. Of the teams remaining in the Pac-12, we know who some of them are, larger cities, etc. Can you tell me who of the remaining 8 or 10 or whatever it is would be the best pickups for the Big 12 if that happens?
Well, assuming that all 10 of them are there, the pecking order, you have to start with Oregon. If you go back to 2013 and you look at Pac-12 conference games, so you don't have the big matchups against Ohio State or Notre Dame or whoever else it is to inflate the ratings, and it's just like versus like, staying within the conference, who's doing better. Oregon was far and away number 1, even above USC. SC was number 2, and then Stanford and Washington were 3 and 4. Stanford likely due to how well they were doing at the beginning of the decade with national television ratings. Obviously, Stanford's a smaller school and historically hadn't done as well as Washington. So Washington would probably be your next one up. And then after that, it really depends on who's generally successful. And from there, I'd probably lean towards Utah. They've been a consistent program for the better part of 20 years now. They're committed, and they'd offer a really nice rivalry with BYU to come in and really enhance the Big 12.
Is this something, though, without Los Angeles that would benefit the Big 12 to a point where they need to look west as opposed to east if they expand?
Well, I think the Big 12 is in the position you have to take valuable assets where you can get them. You know, if either the ACC or Pac-12 had schools that were available last summer, there's a chance they don't move on a couple of the schools that they ended up adding. So if you have the opportunity to add quality schools, you add them. It's very much, to quote the former Big 12 administrators, it's a digital footprint almost more so than a geographical footprint in terms of what you're looking at. Who turns on television sets, who can deliver those television ratings, and in turn deliver money to your conference. So assuming that the Big Ten's rate of SC and UCLA has put the PAC in a situation where those schools would benefit financially from a move to the Big 12, it would benefit the Big 12 to look west and take who you can get. There's no guarantees that the ACC is, one, going to lose any schools before that grant of rights is up. And even if they do, depending on the schools they have, it could be a situation where you would look back and wish that you'd reinforced your league with some solid additions from the West, because there's no guarantees that even if they lose schools, much like the Big 12 last summer, even if you lose some of your schools, you're not necessarily going to break up if it makes sense for the remaining members to stick it out.
Sam, what was of interest in pouring through these TV ratings and whatever else you chose to look at? What was maybe something that was surprising or notable about the Big 12?
Well, about the Big 12, I was surprised at how well the new Big 12 did relative to the Pac-12. I looked at some of the ratings, and I think for games they were involved in last year, I think I'm quoting it right, the Pac-12 was around 0.6 million a game, and the new Big 12 was around 1.5. But the Pac-12, Larry Scott did a lot of poor things in terms of the Pac-12 networks, but one of the things he did really well was he negotiated a really good contract for them in terms of exposure. They capped the number of times they had to appear on Fox Sports 1. They got a good amount of games on ABC and ESPN and got a lot of exposure that way. They had a lot more games on quality networks like ABC, ESPN, or Fox, and a lot fewer as a percentage on lesser networks like FS1 or ESPN2 or ESPNU. So if you just kind of got apples to apples with what networks you were appearing on, it would be pretty even. And that really surprised me because I knew that the Big 12 had more punch than the national pundits would give you in terms of what they could deliver. But to have it be that close, even before they lost SC, that was definitely a surprise.
Sam, what do you feel that the best end game would be for TV deals and conferences right now that aren't the SEC and Big Ten?
Well, the best end game for this is that ship sailed because we're moving towards consolidation, which is great for everyone's pocketbook because you're getting a lot more of the major brands playing each other, but it's not necessarily great for the sport because there's a lot of fan bases that are going to be cut out as a result of this. And there's a lot of relegation for reasons outside the competitive playing field going on. As far as an end game for the Big 12, ACC, or Pac-12, there's the opportunity to emerge as a clear number 3 conference and get the television windows that are available and get the money that's available as a result of it. As far as a favorable end game for anyone in those conferences, you're really hoping that an expanded playoff gets you significant access rather than the 2 big conferences taking their ball and going home.
What do you think, besides the obvious, if in fact there becomes a super conference, how many teams will they end up with, in your opinion?
That depends on the economics of the situation. I mean, back in 2016, the Big 12 remained at 10 because they would have lost money if they went bigger. I think super conferences make sense as long as it makes financial sense. You know, there's talk that the Big 10 might pass on Oregon and Washington because the number they're hitting with SC and UCLA and Ohio State, Michigan, and all of those big brands that they have, to where schools like Oregon and Washington might be diluted. You know, at that point, they just stay at 16 unless there's a different paradigm going on, such as like breaking off from the NCAA and getting more money that way by running things yourself and capturing enough brands to make it worth it nationally. So in the absence of some larger conferences taking their ball and going home kind of end game, I don't think you're going to see super conferences across the board. I think everybody's going to be governed by their own internal financials. If it makes sense to go 16, they'll go 16. If it makes sense to go 20, they'll do it. But I just think when you get into the SEC and Big Ten in particular, the number of schools that can move the dial that much, that can deliver that much value, there's not many of them. And without them, I don't think they go that big.
Sam, thank you, buddy. Can't wait till football gets here and starts talking about X's and O's with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Sam Bradshaw, Sikkim365.com, data, stats, analysis of kind of the TV, and, of course, what he said earlier about Oregon and the numbers he brought up with them, among others as well. It's 5:19. We have a segment again around the corner. John McClain, eventually, Hall of Fame writer and columnist, will join us in about 15 or 20 minutes in Paul's Top 5 as well. Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. We're on until 6 o'clock today. Tomorrow, we do have Ross Dellinger and Andy Staples, a couple of national college football writers from SI.com and also theathletic.com, who will be a part of our show as well. Now, Paul, you talked to Tony. Did you talk to Tony Altomore over the weekend at all?
Yeah, we texted a little bit, yeah.
Anything from him different than what we mentioned about what he was talking about with Thursday? I know he said it's a big, long graphic thing. I just didn't have time to get over it today.
Yeah, we'll have to pour through that. But, basically, look, he's our Pac-12 historian, Tony is. And, you look at – I think one of the things that's interesting when you talk about the Pac-12 and the Big 12 is both leagues were formed out of chaos, and chaos has kind of reigned with them throughout their history. The Pac-12 has maybe been able to be a little bit smoother over a longer period of time because they figured it out quicker than the Big 12 did, who were, again, born out of chaos. But I do think there are similarities in the leagues in the decisions they've made that, they're not always – the Pac-12 has never been a league that's always been pulling in the same direction. That's why the SEC and the Big Ten are the ones that are successful. The other 3 leagues aren't always pulling in the same direction. And because those other teams do, the Pac-12's got a situation here where USC and UCLA for probably the last year have been trying to figure out how to join the Big Ten, and now the other ones who didn't know they were doing it are trying to figure out, do they get to go there too, or what's best for them?
How many of the schools that are not a part of right now the current Big Ten or future Big Ten and SEC, how many of those schools who are part of the Power Fives could walk away from football because they really maybe are tired of the pain in the ass, and or they just many things are more important?
What other sports do you plan on playing?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot.
If you want to walk away from football, you're not playing any others, probably.
Stanford could.
Yeah,
that's one.
Yeah, they dip into their own endowment and pay for it, sure.
Yeah.
But if they want to go off the money that they don't have and what they've actually earned, then with no football, they're not floating those other sports. I mean, they might have some setup that I'm unaware of some great booster circle that supplies all the swimming money in the world or whatever. But I mean, it'd be nice if you could just walk away from football, but very few far between can actually, I would think, do that. I mean, I know there are some schools that operate as basketball-only schools, but we're not talking about big schools either. We're talking about, few and far between once again. So I don't know. I see the point of the question, though, is how many people just get fed up with this and just throw their hands up and say, like, hey, what's the point? At this stage, like, we're so far out money-wise, we're so far out recruiting-wise, we're so far out everything-wise, like, why even field a team? And I do wonder how many schools do feel that way ultimately. Like, I don't think it's going to be the Baylors of the world. I think it'll be a lower on the totem pole because those schools are still scratching and clawing. I mean, they need Clemson to book them to beat them by 62 just to be able to float their basketball teams, with a few $100,000. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to have, I would think, a direct effect on a lot of, here's the thing with the super conferences or whatever, like, are they only playing each other? Are they going to go play Sam Houston State in week 2? Is the SEC going to have that cupcake at the end of the year against whoever that we have to look up where they're even Coppin State? Is that even going to continue? Or you got this big bad conference, so you're going to just play everybody throughout the season? Like, I don't even think we know the answer to that just yet. So, that alone, that would have a dramatic effect on who's still playing football because you take away those guaranteed money games. There's many programs that simply couldn't afford it.
If you're going to build a super conference, wouldn't you want to then drop a lot of those games that you've been having that are basically, and I don't know if any of those teams care.
But that's the thing, though, is like, what is it you're actually playing for? Is it a 4-team playoff? Is it a 16-team playoff? Is it a 32-team playoff? Are bowl games existent? Do we have those? Like, I need to know a lot more information before I go, yeah, like this whole level is going to get wiped out, because if bowl games still exist, well, that's going to leave the door open for a lot of schools. But if they don't, then, yeah, you'd see, I think, a lot of them go away.
I'm sure that there are people who have an idea of where this is headed, but that doesn't seem the way to be operating right now. Right now, it appears to be make the conference as big as you can, and we'll work out all the details later.
And doesn't it just feel like it's all going to end up being a shell version of what it is right now anyways? So, like, we're doing all this breaking away, and we're super elite and exclusive, and, like, would it surprise you if in 7 years Baylor's still playing North Carolina and Clemson in the NCAA tournament and all? What happens to the NCAA tournament, too? That's something that people have debated, but I don't know. I'm kind of with those people who say they're not going to just trim it down to 44 schools and just leave it there. Because, yes, those might be the biggest money getters, but there's still a lot of money you're leaving out on the table. It might not be the 60-something million you get guaranteed thanks to Auburn football or whatever, but you could still squeeze some bucks out of Baylor. You can squeeze some bucks out of TCU even if they're not in the Power 2 or whatever. So, yeah, I just see a lot of programs that maybe they're not valuable in the minds of people out there, but they have value in my mind that can still be extracted. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that this is an ultimate contraction. I think this is a temporary contraction, and then we might see it expand. And would it shock you if there was a 40-team SEC and a 40-team Big Ten in 2030, and it's all basically what it is now, but they just have the control over it, and there's no NCAA and et cetera, et cetera? That wouldn't shock me at all.
Well, that almost needs to be what they – because I do think the one thing that they're leaving out is that, yeah, sure, you're getting all these brands, but people don't follow college football like they do the NFL. Like, where you are, regionality does matter, at least a little bit. And if you've decided to just leave out big chunks of your fan bases and take away the games that they used to watch, are they going to consume it the same way? When it comes down to it, look, right now they've got problems anyway when it comes to ratings at the end of the year. What they're doing now doesn't necessarily make all that better, right? So does, because it's not like adding these teams is going to make the national championship game better and the ratings problems they have on Monday nights on January 9th better. Is that going to get them more eyeballs? I don't know. None of this stuff seems to make any sense to that end.
How much more of an audience will these new mega conferences really get?
That's my question. I don't know.
Yeah. And one of the things, and by the way, Joel, thanks for tons and tons of you on the text line. Of course, the chat room is like on a life of its own, a heart that keeps beating. We appreciate you as well.
It doesn't matter. The TV network's already paying you. They're giving the SEC $1.5 billion. I think the SEC is really all that worried about if it's 16 million watching the championship game or if it's 24 million.
But the TV network needs to, so they can keep doing that.
They can, but I'm saying, like, if the contract's signed, sealed, and delivered, yes, you'd like to have 24. But if it's 16 in year 3, is that the SEC's problem necessarily? It ultimately will be, but it's not right now and not anytime soon.
No, but I think you need to have, the TV networks need to have a long-term view of this.
Well, they got to be able to go sell commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got to be able to prove how many people are watching. That was just,
the TV networks have basically said the smaller fan bases don't matter at all, and we don't care if you're around. So if we lose a few 100,000 people because like 100 programs aren't a part of our little clique here, so be it, because we'll gain millions more because, ooh, look, big flashy brands. And that's what they're banking on, and maybe it works out in the end. I mean, a lot of smart people sure seem to think it will, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing right now. They don't need the smaller schools.
I would love to be a fly in the wall of any of the phone calls among the presidents, the ADs of the 3 non-mega conferences as they are based on the ones who've made decisions. The SEC with Texas, Oklahoma, the Big Ten with what they've done with USC and UCLA. Wouldn't you love to see text messages back and forth or phone calls or emails of WTF, like, and this is why. And that's, who knows what might happen. And again, as Craig even mentioned a couple of different times, even while we've been on the air for 2+ hours, things have changed a little bit as well. We hear about Colorado having this meeting, and we got, here's what we do know. I would be stunned, even though some were probably taking this week or last week or maybe next week as vacation, I would be stunned if there aren't a lot of Zoom calls or whatever you want to call, however you meet specially. I'll tell you this, there were members of the Baylor administration that were headed out to decompress. They can't. Maybe a little bit. So we'll find out, of course, in due time. In due time might be tonight, might be tomorrow, might not be if Notre Dame holds the next bag of cash, whatever they decide to do. But if you wait for Notre Dame and you're the Big 12 and the Pac-12, if you're one of those schools that thinks you could still get attached to the Big Ten, but it may take weeks and weeks and weeks, and then you have an offer to do something different now by either joining the Big 12 or having an alliance with somebody else, that word makes me want to laugh and throw up because of what we saw. Can you wait? I don't know.
What's the question?
If you are one of the teams that's not a part of the SEC or the Big Ten, if you're one of the teams remaining in the Pac-12,
okay,
can you wait to see what Notre Dame does if there is, in fact, offers on the table for you to do something within the Big 12?
I don't know how much of a choice you have. I mean, I think we can't blanket statement every team because I think it's different. Oregon's story is different from Arizona State's. So if you're Oregon, sure. If you're Arizona State, no, probably not. Not so much. You probably need to grab the first life raft floating by. So I don't think it's just like a blanket. It's the same for everybody. I think that Oregon and Washington certainly have a lot more reason to be patient and see what Notre Dame's going to do, because that could determine whether or not they're completely safe for the rest of their university's history or if they got some contingency plans they need to make. But Oregon and Washington have the luxury of being big enough brands that they can wait, and the Big 12 is not going to force their hand.
Well, no, and look, when it comes to alliances or any of that going on, if
Can we eliminate that word, though?
Well, what a partnership.
Let's not let them ruin a word because they sucked at it.
But alliance, look, so if they make some sort of, the Pac-12 and ACC make an alliance, my question, if I am Clemson, Washington, Oregon, Florida State, who know that Vanderbilt's going to be making more money than them, and you have much more success in the field and you have much more television eyeballs, and know that you can bring the whatever ratings are in college football, is, okay, we'll do this if you can promise me close to that money, 100. So if they're getting 100 in the Big Ten and the SEC, we want 90. Is it 90? No. Then no, we're not doing it.
Yeah, I mentioned programs that might, if they just get tired of whatever, or they're not able to get as much money, or conferences break up or whatever, who would do that? There's a list, if you go to Wikipedia, I'm just going to name a few of them. Teams that have given up football. Now, some of these are smaller schools. They're not like what we see in the Power Five. But since 1990, Cal State Long Beach State gave up football in 91. Cal State Northridge. Again, these are not Power Fives, but just an example of schools that gave up football. Canisius Basketball School gave up football. 2002, Fairfield Basketball School gave up football in 2002. Hofstra, hell of a school, right? Gave up football in 2009. Iona, Jacksonville University, gave up football in the last 10 or 12 years. Jacksonville 3 years ago. LaSalle. So, and again, this is not Washington, it's not Oregon, it's not Cal or whatever, but there's a lot of schools that have given up football in recent years, and mainly because Siena, another basketball school. So who knows? I don't think that's going to happen. I can't see Cal and Stanford doing that, but they probably could walk away and not care because of what they could do with other sports and because of what is important to them as well along the way. When we come back, John McClain, he'll join us, Hall of Fame columnist on many things, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Allen Samuels is having the July 4th sales event on the award-winning new 2022 Ram 1500 Quad Cab Lone Star with no payments for 90 days. The special value is up to $7,000 or get $4,000 bonus cash and 2.9% for 72 months. Ram trucks are designed to be durable, functional, and stylish. This legendary truck gives you that first-class feel. Allen Samuels in Waco, the place to shop Ram trucks. First responders get $500 extra cash.
Come by. Let's be friends.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, cause weight gain, and wreak havoc on your sexual desire and performance. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results, so if you're tired of being tired, I challenge you to man up and Google search Low T Waco or go online pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $150 a month, includes lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, follow-up visits compared to $395 a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T as board-certified physician consultations will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone available. Contact Petty Clinic Low T today. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, Petty Clinic Low T, helping men become the high-performance men they deserve to be. PettyClinicLowT.com or Google search Low T Waco.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. It's time for our weekly segment with NFL Hall of Fame columnist John McClain. Brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
John McClain joins us, Hall of Fame writer. On Tuesdays, does many different hits with the radio stations around the country, including Us Tuesdays at around 5:30. John, thanks for your time. And I know a lot of what you cover is the NFL, but you like to bring in a lot of other. What are your thoughts about right now what's going on in college football and the landscape?
I think I've given up a long time ago being surprised what's going on. It's about the television dollars, USC and UCLA moving to the Big Ten. They don't worry anymore about fuel prices for jets. They don't worry about making sure kids get to study. So much can be done online. People are talking about Washington and Oregon going. I think if USC and UCLA wanted Washington and Oregon, they've already been a part of it. Now, I'd love to see Washington and Oregon joining the Big 12. It would make it more powerful because they're better programs than Colorado. Utah's good. Arizona and Arizona State would be good. And I'm glad there's a great story by Pete Thamel on ESPN today about the Big 12 is third of the Power Five, and the Big 12 with the new commissioner is being aggressive. And I think being able to take some of those Pac-12 schools to make a Big 12 West would be great. And I saw another one that said, you're not going to have 20 school conferences. You might see more like the AFC and the NFC, where you would have divisions. Sometime they play each other, sometime they wouldn't. But it's pretty obvious we're going to super conferences in which they'll have their own rules and regulations, because TV's never been more powerful and influential, and the NCAA has never been more powerless. And I'm just hoping whatever happens, Baylor's right in the middle of it.
John, does it surprise you that the fans' wishes are not remotely taken into account here? Well, I'm not talking about realignment, but they don't care about the playoff. I mean, nothing that the fans want ever really seems to happen when it comes to college football.
Well, first of all, they'll never admit that. Of course, they'll say they're interested in their student athletes and they want to do what the fans want. And I'm sure fans in LA are looking forward to a 42-hour round trip drive to the closest team, which I guess will be Wisconsin. And but that doesn't matter anymore. It's about the money. Schools' prices for doing business has gone up, and others are trying to keep up. And TV controls everything. One thing I'm surprised about, I read and hear all these stories about ESPN losing record numbers of subscribers every year because so many people are cutting the cord on cable, and yet they continue to give out multi-billion-dollar deals every year to college sports and the NFL. And they wouldn't be giving it if they didn't have it. It's the price of doing business has become a lot more expensive.
John, is there a difference you feel like that could come about with 2 super leagues, like in terms of just dealing with the NFL versus the current format? Like, is there anything you feel like the draft would become predominantly taken over by the Super 2? Anything that you see having an NFL effect from what college football is going through right now?
Well, I'll tell you this. What's the big deal about the Big Ten? What's the big deal about USC and UCLA? Have they been dominating?
No.
If I'm the Big Ten, I'm more interested in Notre Dame, because the Fighting Irish have been. Maybe they won't with their new coach, but they're still Notre Dame. And right now, Notre Dame hasn't given any indication what they want to do. Everybody thinks they'll end up in the Big Ten. And so USC used to be dominant, and I know they bring larger television markets, and that's important. And I'm wondering in L.A., when you have the Dodgers and the Lakers and the Kings and the Clippers and the Angels, what are the TV ratings for USC and UCLA on Saturday nights when they play football? And if they're in the Big Ten, they're going to be playing more day games. And that's going to be tough on them. You're going to be changing 3. You're going to be going to the Eastern time zone from the Western time zone, where Pacific time zone, where it's going to be 3 hours difference. And I guarantee you that's going to have an effect on them. But the fact is, they haven't been very good to begin with. Now, with Lincoln Riley, everybody expects USC to be a big-time player again on the national scene. But if you're in L.A. and your family's there and you say, well, I want my mom and dad to be able to go to games like they can now, and they'll say, well, hey, let us get you an NIL deal worth a couple of million. You can afford to fly your parents anywhere they want. But as far as parents driving to games anymore, if you're a USC or UCLA fan, if they want to make a week-long trip out of it, sure. They don't care about the parents. The only thing they care about the kids is if they come to schools. Could it actually hurt their recruiting in L.A. that they play so far away from home?
I don't know, that's a good question, John. And when LA's a city that gets recruited nationally too, I mean, so now do you maybe not have as much of a core on that as you think? Because if you're just going to go and play all your games outside LA, why go to USC if you can go anywhere else because it's about the same, right?
Yeah, I know. What if Oregon, which is a great program, says, well, hey, you can come up here and we'll make sure you get home instead of going across to the east. And even if they play, the night games, when they play night games, are always on so late. Most of the country's not going to watch them. But I think it's interesting. It's great for talk shows, great for social media, websites, because it's so interesting. What's going to happen next? And I just hope the Big 12 is aggressive the way it was bringing in Houston, Cincinnati, Central Florida, and BYU. And if indeed they do bring in Arizona, it's already the number one basketball conference. Adding Cincinnati and Houston and BYU, they're better than Oklahoma and Texas in basketball. You bring in Arizona, it's going to be even tougher, but that's great for the fans. And anything's great for the fans. I'm all for it.
You mentioned about recruiting for you think of UCLA and obviously USC with the Big Ten. To me, both of them need a little boost. Of course, Lincoln Riley appears to be giving that to USC. We'll still see. Remains to be seen about UCLA. But can't they get a boost out of saying they're going to be playing in the Big Ten compared to the Pac-12, even if there's a lot of flights? And I still think they'll always just do really well in California.
Maybe they will. I just don't see them when they're telling a recruit, hey, you get to play in Maryland, you get to play, and you're going to get to play at Penn State. And a lot of those guys, where's Penn State? It's in Pennsylvania. Where's Pennsylvania? They grow up, only thing they know is the West Coast. I just don't, other than bringing in more money per year, I don't see how it helps them. I don't see why would guys want to transfer out there if they're already in the Big Ten? Other than financially, I don't see it. I don't see playing in the Big Ten all of a sudden is going to help either one of those programs become better than they are now and more prominent on a national scale.
John, I have to ask you about the now annual softball game being back. The last time I believe it was played was one of the worst days of my life, and I tore both hamstrings in a game that our team, John, was winning 22-4. And I just want to know how it
I'm glad
went.
you brought that up. It went great. I want to thank Baylor. They've been letting us play on the women's softball field for years. If this would have been the 40th, but we didn't play the last two because of the pandemic, we had a great turnout. Went to we have tradition. Paparolo's Friday night, Georgia's after the softball game, and Hall of Fame Saturday night. And one of our originals, Robert Miller, was running the first base, and he suffered a pulled hamstring. And everybody started saying, well, at least you don't have to be carried off like Paul Catalina.
Oh, my.
At least you don't have to be taken to mama's house like Paul Catalina. And I know you were hurt legitimately, but your name came up a lot when Robert got hurt. And we won both games 9 to 5. And we won the second one 19-14 because Jay Black's son, Tyler, who plays at Waco, is an athlete at Waco High. He brought 3 of his friends who were ringers. And for the first time, the local media, led by people like Ken Surrey and Jerry Hill, they were unable to find any ringers.
Oh, that's so good. John, I will defend it. I had to call my mom to get my car back to my house because I couldn't drive. And no one else, like, here's the sad part. Steve Fallon did stay with me. Everyone else is like, hey, we're going to George's. Like, you'll be fine. You know, that was my life.
That's when you find out who likes you.
Yeah.
Steve prayed for you, and that's one reason you were able to overcome them. And you have a standing invitation any year to come back and see if you can play 2 games without getting injured.
I hope so.
John, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
John McClain, Houston Chronicle for many, many years, Hall of Fame writer, now columnist, and now kind of a free agent with what he does since he retired from the Chronicle. I just went, while John was doing his segment, he was talking about recruiting. Among USC's players on their roster, they have 10 players from Texas, 4 from Arizona, and then they have 2 each from Washington, the state of Washington, Washington, D.C., that's the Caleb Williams factor, Hawaii, and Georgia. Florida 3, and there's like 8 or 9 states. So they are, I've always thought that USC, they got a lot of California, but they're very national with their recruiting as well. So you wonder if it might help them with the joining of the Big Ten.
Smoky, I've got a guest idea for tomorrow. Our friend Ben Bolch, who covers the UCLA for the LA Times, just released an article that basically says that UCLA was about to have to contract sports until this move. Like, they were so in debt that it was contract sports or do this. So now they don't have to because of this move.
Yeah, there was something that I read over the weekend. I don't know if you saw this either one of you, that it was like $50-60 million perhaps in debt as well when their athletic department. Of course, most, as you've said, we've said, most athletic departments are in debt, right? And that's why this massive TV money is so intriguing to so many people. When we come back, Paul Catalina's Top 5, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports.
Baylor University is where lights shine bright. So, let there be light. Let there be roommates and teammates, scholarship and championships. Let there be fresh starts and new traditions, fast friendships and lasting impacts. Let there be laughter. Let there be joy. Let there be light. Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
Payments for qualified buyers at 2.9% for 72 with 5,000 down, cash or trade. TTL extra. See deal for details.
Step up your ride at Richard Carr's Summer Savings Event. Find summer savings like a 2018 GMC Sierra SLT, only $432 a month, or a 2017 Buick Encore for $183 a month, or GMC Acadia for only $280 a month. Our vehicles go through a 172-point inspection. We pay top dollar for your trade, and 100% approval is always our goal. Find your next car or truck today at Richard Carr.
At Richard Carr, we give you more.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible and rewarding challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like our free First mobile app, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. That's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Tom Albers, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If your financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Tom Albers, 4301 Lakeshore Drive, 254-776-7605. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:55.
Top 5 realignment questions here after the weekend. Because these are things we need answered so we know going forward, so we don't have to wildly speculate, because right now we're wildly speculating about everything. Number 5. What's the super conference number? Like, what is the number they're trying to get to? So that we know when it stops or what things are going to be. Because what's the number? I don't know. Is it 20? Is it 24? Like, you know, is it 2 40-team leagues, like you said, Craig, and 20-30 of just everybody being either the Big Ten or the SEC, and then maybe those leagues not even having that name just because they're not really that anymore? Who knows? What's the number? Where are they trying to get to?
Nobody knows but those in charge. Nobody. And if they did, that would be out there by now. But I've seen stay pat where they are for the time being until ACC contract run. You know, I've seen, it's going to be at least 20 each. It's going to be at least 24. Well, no way they leave these teams out. It's going to have to be at least 28 apiece. You know, so I mean, it might be every school that's out there right now. And again, it's all just the same thing, but they just got rid of the NCAA boogeyman. You know, and found ways to be more creative and make money in different ways. I don't know. Like, obviously there's a split happening, but to what extent? Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, you can make a case for adding another 10 teams to this mix. I mean, at some point you do water it down to where I don't know how you're still going, these teams add value. I think we're like at the last, 12 schools that add value are out there, and most of them are in the ACC right now, and then a couple in the PAC. But outside of that, I mean, I don't know. That's the biggest question, because, if you said it's going to be 90, well, then Kansas fan isn't like jumping off a building thinking they're not getting in the Big Ten, or West Virginia to the ACC, or whatever life raft people have been begging for years. If it's 100 and whatever schools, then hey, everybody's cool. We don't have to freak out about the if you're in, if you're out kind of thing. So that's a great question, and nobody knows.
Yeah. I mean, let's just run down.
What would the number need to be for you to feel safe about Baylor?
Like 50 to 60.
Yeah. 50 to 60. But let's look at the just real quick. The brands would be Oregon and Washington in the Pac-12.
And that's only, quite frankly, I don't know that if you were to go toe-to-toe, for example, what is Washington's advantage over Baylor? They're just way bigger, and they've got way more history.
Seattle.
And that's that's their advantage. But program-wise, give me Baylor over Washington's across the board all day, every day.
Yeah.
But they've got that thing that just Baylor can't change Waco overnight, and they can't have 100,000 alumni overnight like some of these other schools. If they did, then we wouldn't even be questioning. They'd be in. It wouldn't even be a question.
Yeah, I mean, in the ACC, really, you've got Florida State, Clemson, UNC, maybe Virginia, Miami. Notre Dame, of course, is in there, other sports than football, but, Stanford, those are the schools we're really talking about. And then you kind of get in the weeds, as great as Virginia Tech's been in football, over their history,
right.
do they get left out? Does NC State?
They're probably playing in a conference with Baylor, and it's just a matter of, if you listen to Twitter, TCU was in the Big Ten last week because they got the Fort Worth market. Well, that died out fast. Wonder why. And so, I guess eye of the beholder, and what are these people who are making these decisions actually looking for? But, I would think you got to get to like 50 for Baylor to start feeling like they got to – because here's the thing, Houston, TCU – what's it about? If it's about markets to an extent, well, they're screwed there because there's 2 or 3 schools in state right now that have bigger markets. So there alone is just a losing battle.
Attached to the bigger markets.
Right, yeah. So
you know what? Bringing this up, if you don't mind me, Paul, if you're Brigham Young, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF, and you have been waiting to get your chance to be a part of a Power 5 conference, and you finally have your opening, and now this happens that might change all of that.
Well, how about if you're Baylor, and I know I keep using them, but that's who we covered for beginners, and so it's just easy to go with that. But how about Cincinnati football? You guys are never going to be a part of the party with the Ohio States and the Bamas and here they are, and they're competing, and Baylor's a scandal a few years ago away from being in the playoff, basically. Go down in the dumps, come back, knocking on the door again last year. Here they are with Dave Aranda, recruiting the best class they've ever had. Money's good, everything's good, and then here's this. And it's like it's like that unattainable brass ring that only a few select people are allowed to actually compete for. You know what I mean?
And that's what I brought up. Yeah, I mean, you wait for your time, and it shows up.
Do everything you're supposed to do, and then it gets ripped away.
Yeah. Well, and I think we know the answer to this next question based on that lead-in. What happens to the teams that wanted to join the Big 12 last year? What happens to them? Yeah. Like, here they are. Yeah. They've probably spent this year going, okay, well, we just have to wait on the TV deal and all this exit, blah, 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 blah. And then UCLA and USC do this, and you're like, oh, well, I guess we have to, they have to, again, hope for another miracle.
Well, San Diego State feels the best out of probably all those. I wouldn't feel great if I was USF about much. Memphis is kind of in the middle. SMU, thank God they're from Texas. And Boise State, they had to – I don't know. If the Pac-12 wants to survive and remain a thing, even if it's a shell of itself, then San Diego State and Boise State seem like they'd be great candidates to be the new Mountain West Pac-12, whatever you want to call it. But and then SMU, if you wanted to say, if the Big Ten for some reason, we got not the Big Ten, but the Pac-12, we need some Texas flair here for recruiting purposes. SMU maybe get a phone call, but it's not great for USF, that's for sure. I don't think for Memphis
And I
either.
think that they would get to UNLV before they got to SMU, because of the regionality and then the growing market size there, and the fact that their office is going to be
Although regionality doesn't matter, remember?
Yeah, well, yeah. Or at least, it just makes sense for
They're close, yes.
Yeah, they're close. Number 3, for the Big 12, is it best to merge with somebody or just rate them? And I think the question there is, the answer there, to me, it's rate. I don't see any benefit to, getting a bunch of schools that aren't going to help you, as opposed to getting the ones that will help you, and then maybe not only looking west but looking east for when whatever happens with the ACC could happen.
I know there's probably some parable or something about not going eye for an eye, but I don't remember the Pac-12 throwing any life rafts last summer. Do you guys?
No.
I think they all pointed and laughed and just kind of cracked on the Big 12. So no, I'm not throwing Cal a dadgum thing. There are a select few, Oregon, Washington, well, I'll just ignore what they said because I feel pretty good that we'll beat you and you're just going to add value and you're helping us in a roundabout way. But I'd definitely snub a couple of them, and I would not full-on merge unless it was my only option. And really, I think this boils down to what are your options. Your best option is to raid, then you raid. If your best option is to merge, then you merge. But I don't know which one's the best one right now.
Yeah. Look, college football right now isn't a bunch of people from – it's not a World War II movie where a bunch of countries come together in search of a common goal. It's Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Pat you on the back and slit your throat as you turn around. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is.
We had somebody – I wish I would have read that earlier. We had somebody at chat or text line that said, I appreciate what you guys have at least done in the last few days is not look down on what's happening with the Pac-12 and being fair and understanding it because you've been through it, rather than just look at you, which is absolutely what happened in July of last year to the Big 12.
Yeah. Number 2, what can the ACC do about its grant of rights?
That's your homework assignment.
I got to figure that out because outside of busting the league up or just deciding to pay the fees, what can you do about that? Now, I did read something over the weekend where some people say that the ACC might have signed their TV contract under duress because of that, but it's not like ESPN was, had somebody tied up and was shocking them like in Lethal Weapon, like, where is it? Where are the drugs? It's not like that was going on. They knew what they were doing, and they were trying to get it ahead of the ACC at the time was trying to take advantage of the fact that the Pac-12 was run by Larry Scott and the Big 12 was going through what it was going through, and so they signed their granted rights and got their television network. The Big 12 at the time had one TV network, and that was for one team, and the ACC was like, we're not going to be that dumb. Let's get our own, and took advantage of it, but they signed a bad contract. Now is the way things look. So what can they do about it? I don't know if the teams want to get out.
Yeah, I mean, if we knew for a fact nobody could do anything until 2036, that would make the whole story a lot clearer. But the fact that there's this temptation of thinking that Miami or Clemson or Florida State could any day be free or in the next couple of years be free versus in the next 10 plus, that does change the dynamic a little bit. I just wonder, for one, how much would an alliance change things if they were to align with the Pac-12? Like, does that keep everything intact the way that it's supposed to be, or does that open up some possibilities where you're aligned, but maybe that opens the door for Clemson to say, hey, have fun with that, but we're going to go play these other teams? I don't know. I don't know the answers to that, but I am kind of wondering now all of a sudden is, okay, if you're the Pac-12 and you align with the ACC, that saves you for right now. But in a few years from now, what is the point?
That's what I've been saying. Like,
what is the Pac-12 going to – is USC and UCLA going to come back?
No.
Are they going to raid the Big 12 for the best brands there?
Is that going to keep them from still losing teams to SEC?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, is everybody going to stick around for the next few years just to see what happens in 10 years? Like, yeah, if you're the Pac-12, that ACC, partnership sounds good, but – outside of just basically keeping your head above water and putting some more air in your floaties, this is still going to be a problem in a few years.
Well, the thing is, you're what that is to me is floaties in the ocean and sharks are swimming around.
Yeah.
So,
but now you got a buddy whose hand you're holding, but you're still surrounded by sharks.
And you avoid the sharks, and then there's a riptide.
Yeah, I mean, there's all that. I don't know, like. Again, I'll tell you, as a Florida State fan and somebody who wants to see my university do well, look, Smokey, Nebraska and Florida State kind of in the same boat right now, and they're both garbage. But Nebraska is not in the same boat because they're garbage with a bunch of money. They're Park Avenue garbage, So,
but how much of that money can help eliminate the stench?
The fans will love the new Jumbotron that's now bigger than the city of Omaha and Lincoln put together, but they're still not going to win any games.
It can't, but eventually somebody's going to wind up there that can win there.
At least if you're making money, it helps you handle that or digest that a lot better than if it was $31 million a year.
Exactly.
Yeah, but, okay, the ACC, I know we got to go, but the ACC partners with the Pac-12. That helps. I mean, I guess for right now, that's cool. They help the Pac-12. But do they get some kind of guarantee that Clemson and Georgia Tech and all these teams are going to stay? And then in a few years, the Pac is going to come together and they absorb?
No.
Clemson's still going to get picked off by somebody probably in a few years. So what does the Pac-12 partnership really – that's what I'm having trouble figuring out is what does the partnership or alliance ultimately do? It doesn't change really anything other than right this moment.
You get Clemson and Oregon playing one time, and they could both leave and go to different leagues.
They could play in a non-conference game anyway.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I don't understand.
And number one, is Notre Dame really in play? Because they hold, for just being one school, an amazing number of cards.
They like that.
And they like it. But if they decide to join a league, then some of that goes away. They're still a big, powerful brand, but some of that goes away.
I am not a Notre Damer, and I don't have any insight into their thought process. I do know that some of the articles I've read are wishful thinking, and hopefully this pushes them over the edge, and they decide they're going to join the SEC or the Big Ten now. I mean, they're going to do whatever they want to do. That's very much clear. They're clearly not on anybody's time but their own, and who knows when we hear from them, but I think everything's in play right now if you're Notre Dame. But would it surprise you if they decided, yeah, this is probably the best time we could ever do this, but we're going to stay independent? It wouldn't surprise me because it's Notre Dame, but would it shock me to see them join one of those two conferences? No. Would it shock me? The only thing that would shock me would be to see them join, like our caller earlier, the Big 12, because it just wouldn't make any sense whatsoever for them to do that.
All right. Thank you, Levi, Jack, and also Garrett, for behind the scenes. Again, tomorrow we'll line up another guest with you to talk about college football, the landscape that every single day is changing, if not 2 or 3 times a day. Paul, thank you very much. Craig Smoak as well. Our sponsors are amazing. In fact, one of them was on our chat room earlier, Lance Aldridge. We appreciate you. Thank you. For those who started with us on April the 6th to who you are, 2020 to where we are now, we appreciate you. Good night, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering the cost of healthcare bills. When you need an MRI, ask your doctor for an Ideal MRI. Visit us at idealmri.com or call us at 833-IDEAL-MRI.